Three men in black suits stand at her door holding a dying stranger. Blood pools on her apartment floor. The man with gray eyes and a bullet in his shoulder looks at Dr. Liora Vale like she's already his. "Save me," Cassian Moretti whispers, "or your sister dies tonight." Outside, Chicago burns with gang war. Inside, Liora's hands shake over stolen surgical tools. She has one choice: become the private doctor to the city's most dangerous crime lord, or lose everything. By sunrise, her old life will be dead. Like this video, comment what city you're watching from, and follow me to the end to see how this story unfolds. Hase! The knocking started at 12:47 a.m. Liora Vale jerked awake on her couch, still wearing scrubs stiff with someone else's blood from her shift at Chicago Memorial. The television flickered blue across her face, some late-night talk show she'd fallen asleep watching. Her neck ached, her eyes burned. The knocking came again, harder this time, urgent and deliberate. She sat up slowly, every muscle protesting. 14-hour shifts were destroying her body one vertebra at a time. The knocking turned to pounding. "I'm coming," she called out, voice rough. Through the peephole, three men stood in the hallway. Black suits, expensive ones. The kind that didn't belong in her building where the elevator hadn't worked in 6 months and someone had stolen the light bulbs from the third-floor sconces. The man in front had a scar running through his left eyebrow. Behind him, two others supported a fourth man between them, his head hanging forward, dark hair falling across his face. Liora's stomach dropped. "Dr. Vale." The scarred man's voice came through the door. "We need your help." "Call 911. "Can't do that." "Then go to an emergency room." "Can't do that either." Liora pressed her forehead against the door. Every instinct screamed at her to walk away, go back to the couch, pretend she'd never heard them. But the wounded man's head lifted slightly, and even through the distorted peephole glass, she saw his face. Pale, sweating, gray eyes that somehow still held focus despite the blood soaking through his white shirt. "Please," the scarred man said. It didn't sound like begging. It sounded like a threat wrapped in courtesy. She opened the door. They moved past her immediately, carrying the wounded man straight to her kitchen table. Up close, the blood was worse. It had soaked through his shirt, his jacket, dripping onto her floor in steady drops that sounded too loud in the silent apartment. The scarred man pulled out a chair, and they lowered their cargo into it with surprising gentleness. "What happened?" Liora asked. "Gunshot," one of them said. "Shoulder." "How long ago?" "Hour. Maybe less." Liora moved closer. The wounded man's eyes tracked her movement with unnerving clarity. He couldn't be older than 35, sharp features made sharper by pain, dark hair pushed back from his forehead. Blood had dried at the corner of his mouth. His breathing came shallow and controlled, like he was rationing each inhale. "I need to take him to a hospital," Liora said. "No." The word came from the wounded man himself, voice low and rough. "Here, now. I can't perform surgery in my kitchen." "You can." His gray eyes locked onto hers. "You will." Something in his tone made her skin prickle. This wasn't desperation. This was certainty, like he already knew how this would end. "Who are you?" she asked. "Cassian Moretti." The name hit her like cold water. Everyone in Chicago knew that name, even if they pretended not to. The Moretti family controlled half the city's underground operations. Protection rackets, gambling, smuggling routes through the harbor. Her hospital treated their casualties regularly, the ones who made it through the doors before bleeding out, the ones who didn't talk to police afterward. "I can't help you," Liora said, stepping back. Cassian smiled, though it looked more like a grimace. "Your sister." "Emma Vale, 23 years old, brown hair, blue eyes, works at that coffee shop on Michigan Avenue. Lives in Wicker Park with two roommates who think she's studying graphic design." Liora's blood turned to ice. "She owes money to some very impatient people," Cassian continued. $68,000. Gambling debt accumulated over 9 months. They've been asking nicely so far." "You're lying." "I wish I was." The scarred man pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. Emma standing outside a building Liora didn't recognize, laughing with someone off camera. The timestamp read 3 hours ago. "Touch her and I'll, save my life," Cassian interrupted. and I'll make sure no one touches her ever again. Refuse, and I can't make any promises about what happens before sunrise." Leora's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to scream, to throw them all out, to call the police and damn the consequences. But Emma's face floated in her mind. Sweet, reckless Emma who couldn't keep a secret or pay a bill on time. Emma who called crying about money problems once a month. Emma who never mentioned $68,000 in gambling debt. "I need supplies," Leora said quietly. "Tell us what you need." She listed items from memory. Surgical gloves, antiseptic, sutures, local anesthetic, sterile drapes, irrigation solution, hemostats. The scarred man made a phone call. 20 minutes later, someone knocked on the door with 2 duffel bags full of medical supplies, some still in hospital packaging. Leora didn't ask where they got them. She cleared her kitchen table, pushing aside mail and coffee cups and the remains of a frozen dinner she'd barely touched. Cassian watched her move with that same unsettling focus, like he was memorizing every detail. His breathing had gotten worse, more labored. "Shirt off," she said. The scarred man helped him. The bullet had entered just below the collarbone, right side. No exit wound. That meant the bullet was still inside, possibly lodged against bone. Leora pulled on gloves, her hands steadier than they had any right to be. "This is going to hurt," she said. "I know." She injected local anesthetic around the wound site, though she knew it wouldn't be enough. Not for what she was about to do. Cassian's jaw tightened, but he didn't make a sound. She irrigated the wound, blood mixing with saline and running down his chest in pink rivers. "Hold him," she told the others. They gripped his arms. Leora picked up the forceps, took a breath, and pushed them into the bullet hole. Cassian's entire body went rigid. Sweat broke out across his forehead. But he didn't scream, didn't even curse, just breathed through his teeth, while she dug through torn muscle and tissue, searching for metal and meat. "Talk to me," she said, needing to keep him conscious. "Tell me something." "Like what?" His voice came out strangled. "Anything. Why did someone shoot you?" "Business disagreement. Specifics." Refused to give them what they wanted. Which was? Control. The forceps hit something hard. Leora adjusted her angle, got a grip, and pulled. The bullet came out slick with blood, deformed from impact. She dropped it into a bowl with a metallic clink. "Got it," she said. Cassian's head fell back, breathing hard. "Told you." "Told me what?" "That you could do it." She cleaned the wound again, checking for fragments or debris, then started closing. Her sutures were neat and precise, despite the terrible lighting and her shaking hands. The scarred man watched over her shoulder like a supervisor. Outside, thunder rumbled. Rain started hitting the windows. "Why me?" Leora asked as she worked. "Chicago has doctors who do this kind of work, discreet ones. Most of them are dead or working for my enemies," Cassian said. "You're clean. No connections to any family. No debts to anyone except your sister's mess. You researched me." "I research everyone." She tied off the final suture and covered the wound with sterile gauze. "You need antibiotics, strong ones, and you should stay somewhere with medical supervision for at least 48 hours. "Not possible. Then you might die from infection." "I've survived worse." Leora stripped off her gloves and washed her hands in the sink, watching blood swirl down the drain. Her entire body felt like it was vibrating. She'd just performed surgery on a crime lord in her kitchen while his enforcers stood guard. This was insane, illegal, dangerous. "Your sister's debt," Cassian said behind her. "Consider it paid." She turned. He was standing now, the scarred man helping him into a clean shirt someone had produced from nowhere. Even wounded and pale, Cassian held himself like royalty, like someone who'd never learned to bow. "That's it?" Leora asked. "We're done?" "Not quite." Cassian buttoned his shirt slowly, wincing with each movement. "I need a doctor I can trust, someone who won't ask questions or talk to police, someone who understands what loyalty means." "I'm not a criminal." "No. You're something better. You're trapped." The words landed like a punch. Leora wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but they both knew the truth. She was trapped. Trapped by medical school debt that would take 20 years to pay off. Trapped by her sister's chaos. Trapped by double shifts in a one-bedroom apartment where the heat barely worked in winter. 18 months, Cassian said. "Work for me exclusively. Private physician on call whenever I need you. In exchange, every debt you have disappears. Student loans, credit cards, your sister's gambling problem. Gone by morning. That's not possible. I own 3 banks and have significant influence over 4 others. It's very possible. Liora laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You're asking me to sell my soul. I'm asking you to survive. Cassian took a step closer, gray eyes boring into hers. You're drowning, Dr. Vale. Working yourself to death for a hospital that doesn't appreciate you. Sacrificing everything for a sister who keeps making the same mistakes. How much longer can you keep this up? That's not your concern. It is now. Why? The question burst out of her. Why do you care? You have money, power, people who would kill for you. Why choose me? Cassian studied her for a long moment. Because when I woke up on your kitchen table with you digging a bullet out of my shoulder, you called me an idiot for not going to a hospital. No fear, no deference, just anger that I was making your life harder. He smiled slightly. I need someone who isn't afraid to tell me the truth. I just met you, and you already hate me. That's refreshing. The scarred man cleared his throat. Boss, we need to move. Cassian nodded but kept his eyes on Liora. Think about my offer. I'll give you until tomorrow night. And if I say no, then you say no. Your sister's debt is still cleared. Consider that payment for tonight's work. He moved toward the door, then paused. But you won't say no. You sound very certain. I am. Cassian looked back at her one last time. Because you're smart enough to recognize an exit when you see one. They left as suddenly as they'd arrived, the door clicking shut behind them. Liora stood in her kitchen, surrounded by bloody gauze and surgical instruments, the smell of antiseptic burning her nostrils. The clock on the microwave read 2:34 a.m. She should call the police. Report what happened, get Emma into witness protection or something. Instead, she cleaned up the mess, throwing everything into garbage bags that she'd have to dispose of somewhere far from her building. Her hands moved on autopilot while her mind spun in circles. 18 months, freedom from debt, a chance to breathe. All it would cost was working for a man who built his empire on violence. Liora laughed again, softer this time. What choice did she really have? Cassian was right, she was drowning. Every month she fell further behind, working more hours for less return, watching her life slip away in 12-hour shifts and maxed-out credit cards. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Black car will pick you up. Make your choice. CM. She stared at the message for a long time. The rain got heavier outside, hammering against the windows like it was trying to break through. Somewhere in the city, Emma was probably asleep, completely unaware that her gambling debt had just been erased by one of Chicago's most dangerous criminals, unaware that her older sister had just stitched up a man who could have them both killed with a phone call. Liora thought about her medical school professors, about the oath she'd taken. First, do no harm. But what did that mean when harm was already done, when refusing to help would cause more damage than stepping into the darkness? She deleted the text message, then immediately regretted it, then laughed at herself for thinking it mattered. Cassian Moretti knew where she lived, knew where Emma worked, knew everything about both of them. Deleting a text changed nothing. By the time dawn crept through her windows, Liora still hadn't slept. She showered, scrubbing blood from under her fingernails, and dressed for her shift. The hospital waited for no one, not even someone who'd just crossed a line they could never uncross. Her phone buzzed again as she locked her apartment door. Another unknown number. This time, a photo. Emma walking into her coffee shop, completely safe, carrying her usual oversized bag. The message below read, "Kept my word, now keep yours." Liora pocketed the phone and headed for the stairs. That evening, exactly at 8 p.m., a black Mercedes pulled up outside her building. The back door opened. Inside, Cassian Moretti sat waiting, his right arm in a sling but otherwise looking composed and deadly in a charcoal suit. "Dr. Vale," he said as she climbed in, "glad you could make it. Did I have a choice?" Everyone has choices. Some just have better options than others. The car pulled away from the curb, gliding through Chicago traffic like it owned the streets. Liora watched her neighborhood disappear through tinted windows, brick buildings, and corner stores giving way to cleaner streets and taller buildings. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Home," Cassian said. Yours, temporarily. Until you decide. I thought I was deciding now. You are. But first you should see what you're agreeing to. They drove north, leaving downtown behind. The buildings got larger, more spread out. Mansion territory. Old money streets where trees lined the roads and gates guarded driveways. The Mercedes turned onto a private road that curved through landscaped grounds. At the end sat an estate that looked like it belonged in a different century. Stone walls, tall windows, grounds that stretched into darkness. This is where you live? Liora asked. When I'm not being shot, Cassian said dryly. The car stopped at the front entrance. The scarred man from last night appeared, opening the door. Cassian climbed out slowly, favoring his injured shoulder. Liora followed, her heart hammering. Inside, the house was somehow both beautiful and threatening. Marble floors that echoed footsteps, dark wood paneling on the walls, art that probably cost more than her medical school tuition. But underneath the elegance, she sensed the violence. Armed guards positioned discreetly in corners, security cameras hidden in crown molding, doors that looked too reinforced to be merely decorative. Welcome to the kingdom, Cassian said, watching her take it all in. I'll show you the medical suite. He led her down a hallway and through a door that required a key card to open. Behind it was a fully equipped medical facility that would have made some hospitals jealous. Examination tables, surgical lights, monitors, a pharmacy locked behind glass. Everything state-of-the-art and pristine. This is where you'd work, Cassian said. Private, secure. Better equipment than that hospital where they're running you into the ground. Liora walked through the space, running her hand along the examination table. Who else uses this? You'd be the first permanent physician. Up until now, we've relied on rotation. The ones who ended up dead? Most of them got greedy, started selling information. That doesn't end well in this business. She turned to face him. And you think I'm different? I think you're motivated by something other than money. Your sister. Your own survival. Those are things I can work with. Cassian leaned against the doorframe, his gray eyes sharp despite the pain he had to be feeling. I'm not going to pretend this is a normal job, Dr. Vale. You'll see things that will test your medical ethics. You'll treat people who probably deserve to die. You'll be complicit in activities that would horrify your colleagues. Great recruitment speech. But, he continued, ignoring her sarcasm, you'll also have resources you've never dreamed of. Money to do your job right without administrators telling you to cut corners. Freedom from the debt that's been strangling you since medical school. Protection for your sister from her own mistakes. In exchange for 18 months of my life. In exchange for a chance to breathe. Liora walked to the window. Outside, the ground stretched into darkness, lit by subtle pathway lights. She could see the shadows of more guards patrolling. This wasn't a home. It was a fortress. And Cassian Moretti was asking her to become part of it. I need to know something, she said without turning around. That bullet last night. The business disagreement. Will there be more? Yes. At least he was honest. How often? Depends on how the next few months go. We're in the middle of a territorial dispute. Could get messy. Messy meaning more people bleeding on my table. Messy meaning I need someone I trust to keep me and mine alive. Liora closed her eyes. She thought about Emma, about the $68,000 that had vanished like smoke, about her own suffocating debt, about the endless shifts at Chicago Memorial where she was just another overworked doctor among dozens. Here, she'd be essential, valued, free, and completely trapped in a different way. Okay, she said quietly. Okay? She turned to face him. 18 months. I'll do it. But I have conditions. Cassian's mouth curved into something that might have been respect. I'm listening. My sister never knows about this. Ever. As far as she's concerned, I got a new job at a private practice. Done. I want full access to all medical supplies I need, no questions asked. Already planned for it, and if someone is dying and I think they need a hospital, I make that call, not you. Cassian considered this. As long as it doesn't compromise our security, agreed. Then we have a deal. He pushed off the door frame and extended his left hand, the uninjured one. Liora stared at it for a long moment before reaching out. His grip was warm and firm, the handshake of someone sealing a contract that couldn't be broken. Welcome to the family, Dr. Vale, Cassian said. I'm not family. I'm an employee. Keep telling yourself that. He led her back through the house, pointing out areas she'd have access to. The kitchen where staff could prepare meals at any hour, the library where she could work on paperwork, the guest wing where she'd stay whenever she needed to be on site overnight. You'll start Monday, Cassian said. Someone will deliver your personal items from your apartment. I didn't agree to move in. You didn't disagree either. He smiled at her expression. Relax, Dr. Vale. You'll keep your apartment, but there will be nights when staying here makes more sense, especially during active operations. Active operations, Liora repeated. You mean when people are shooting at you? Exactly. They reached the front entrance again. The Mercedes waited outside, engine idling. Cassian walked her to the car. One more thing, he said before she got in. Thank you for last night. I know you didn't have much choice, but you did good work. Don't thank me yet, Liora said. We might both regret this. Probably. Cassian held the door open for her. But I've built my entire life on calculated risks. You're just the latest one. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be. The drive back to her apartment felt surreal. Liora watched the city pass by, normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that a few miles away, empires of crime operated behind closed doors. She was one of them now, part of the machinery of violence. When she finally collapsed into her bed at midnight, Liora's phone buzzed one last time. Another message from the unknown number. Sleep well, Dr. Vale. Monday, your new life begins. CM. She didn't delete it this time. Instead, she stared at the ceiling and wondered if she'd just made a deal with the devil or simply accepted the only escape route available. Maybe there wasn't a difference. Maybe survival always required compromise. Her last thought before sleep took her was of Cassian's gray eyes watching her in the medical suite, assessing, calculating, seeing something in her she wasn't sure she wanted him to see. 18 months. She could survive anything for 18 months. Couldn't she? But as rain started falling again outside her window, Liora realized with cold certainty that surviving the next 18 months wasn't the real question. The real question was what would be left of her when those months were done, whether she'd walk away clean or stained by all the blood she was about to have on her hands. The answer scared her more than anything else that had happened, because deep down, in a place she didn't want to examine too closely, part of her was already looking forward to Monday. Monday came too fast. Liora stood in front of Chicago Memorial's HR office at 6 in the morning, resignation letter folded in her hand. She'd typed it the night before, sitting at her kitchen table with a glass of wine she didn't finish. 2 weeks' notice. Professional. Clean. The kind of letter that wouldn't burn bridges. Except she wasn't giving 2 weeks. The HR director, a tired woman named Patricia, who'd processed hundreds of resignations over the years, barely looked up when Liora handed her the letter. Effective immediately? Patricia said, reading. Yes? That's unusual. Did something happen? I got another offer, private practice. They need me to start today. Patricia's eyes narrowed slightly, the first sign of actual interest. Must be quite an offer. It is. Well, Patricia signed some forms, stamped others. We'll process your final check. You'll need to return your badge and any hospital property. Clean out your locker by end of day. That was it. 4 years of her life at Chicago Memorial, summarized in 10 minutes of paperwork. Liora walked out of the office feeling unmoored, like she'd just stepped off solid ground into deep water. Her phone buzzed. A text from the same unknown number. Car will arrive at your apartment at noon. Bring what you need for a week. CM. A week? She'd thought she'd be commuting, maintaining some separation between her old life and this new arrangement. Apparently Cassian had different plans. Liora spent the morning packing. Clothes, toiletries, her laptop, medical journals she hadn't had time to read. She looked around her apartment, the shoebox she'd called home for 3 years, and felt nothing. No attachment. No regret. Just a vague sense that she was watching someone else's life from a distance. At exactly noon, the black Mercedes appeared. The driver this time was different, younger, with sharp eyes that tracked every movement on the street. He loaded her bag into the trunk without speaking, then opened the back door. The drive north felt longer in daylight. She could see the city properly now, the way neighborhoods shifted from gritty to polished within a few blocks. By the time they reached Cassian's estate, the sun was high and bright. making the stone walls look less menacing than they had at night. The scarred man met her at the entrance. "Dr. Vale, I'm Victor, head of security. You need anything, you find me." Noted. Boss is waiting in the medical suite. He wants to go over protocols before you start. Liora followed him through the house, trying to memorize the layout. Right at the marble staircase, left through the hallway with the paintings of people who looked like they'd murdered their way into wealth, down the corridor to the reinforced door. Cassian stood inside the medical suite, his right arm still in a sling but looking significantly better than he had 3 nights ago. He wore dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, more casual than the suits but no less commanding. "Dr. Vale," he said, "how's the shoulder?" "Healing. You do good work." I had motivation. "Let's go over how this works." Cassian moved to the examination table, leaning against it. "You'll have 3 types of patients. First, me. Anything happens to me, you handle it here unless I'm literally dying. Second, my immediate circle. About 8 people I trust completely. They get the same discretion. Third, associates. People who work for us but aren't inner circle. Those you can refuse to treat if you think they're not worth the risk." "How do I know the difference?" "Victor will tell you. He screens everyone who comes through that door." Liora nodded slowly. "What about emergencies, situations where someone needs a hospital?" "Your call, like we agreed. But understand that sometimes a hospital means police involvement. Gunshot wounds, certain types of injuries, they trigger mandatory reporting. If that happens, it compromises everyone. So basically, I'm only supposed to say someone needs a hospital if they're already dead." Cassian's mouth twitched. "Your words, not mine. This is insane." "Yes." He pushed off the table, moving closer. "But you already knew that. You signed up anyway." She couldn't argue with that. Liora walked around the suite, opening cabinets, checking supplies. Everything was top tier. Medications she'd only dreamed of having easy access to at Chicago Memorial. Diagnostic equipment that was newer than anything in the ER. Someone had spared no expense. "Who set all this up?" she asked. "I did. Took about 6 months to acquire everything without raising flags." "You've been planning this for a while." "I've been looking for the right doctor for a while. You're just the first one who fit." "Lucky me," Cassian smiled, a real one this time. "Your room is ready. 3rd floor, east wing. Victor will show you. Get settled. Tomorrow, we start for real." "What happens tomorrow?" "I have a meeting, potentially hostile. I want you on standby. You think someone's going to shoot you again?" "I think it's possible. This business runs on unpredictability." Liora wanted to ask more questions, but the way Cassian was looking at her made it clear the conversation was over. She followed Victor up a grand staircase that belonged in a museum, down another hallway lined with more unsettling portraits, to a door that opened onto a room 3 times the size of her apartment. "This is mine?" she asked. "For as long as you're here," Victor gestured around. "Bathroom through there. Closet on the left. You need anything? Call the kitchen extension. Someone's always available." He left her alone. Liora stood in the center of the room, her single duffel bag looking pathetic on the enormous bed. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the grounds. She could see guards patrolling in the distance, their movements precise and practiced. She unpacked slowly, hanging clothes in a closet that could fit her entire wardrobe 3 times over. The bathroom had heated floors and a shower with more jets than she could count. This was luxury she'd only seen in magazines, and it all felt like a beautiful cage. That night, Liora couldn't sleep. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet. She kept expecting someone to burst through the door with a bleeding body. Instead, nothing happened. The house settled around her with creaks and distant sounds she couldn't identify. At 3 in the morning, she gave up and went downstairs. The kitchen was enormous and empty, all stainless steel and marble counters. She found coffee and started a pot, then nearly jumped out of her skin when someone spoke behind her. "Can't sleep either?" Cassian stood in the doorway, barefoot and shirtless, his injured shoulder wrapped in fresh bandaging. In the dim light, Liora could see scars she hadn't noticed before, old bullet wounds, knife marks, a life written in scar tissue. "You should be resting," she said. "Should be doing a lot of things." He moved into the kitchen, taking a seat at the island. "How's the room?" "Excessive." "You'll get used to it." "Will I?" Cassian studied her for a moment. "You're having second thoughts." I'm having 10th and 11th thoughts. But you're still here. Liora poured 2 cups of coffee, sliding one across to him. Where else would I go? Back to my apartment? Back to drowning? You could run. Disappear. I wouldn't stop you. You're lying. Maybe. Cassian took a sip, winced. Or maybe I'm curious to see what you'd choose. They sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee in the dark kitchen, while Chicago slept outside. It felt surreal, this moment of quiet domesticity with a man who probably had people killed before breakfast. Tell me something true, Liora said finally. About you, about this life. Like what? Like why you do this. You clearly have money, power. You could go legitimate, run your businesses without the violence. Cassian set down his cup. You think I haven't considered that? Every person in this business considers it eventually. So why don't you? Because legitimate power is an illusion. Politicians, CEOs, they all answer to someone. Money, voters, shareholders. But this? He gestured around them. This is real. No one tells me what to do. No one controls my choices. Except the people trying to kill you. They're trying to take what's mine. That's different. Not from where I'm sitting. Cassian laughed, low and rough. You're going to be a problem, aren't you? Probably. Good. He stood, leaving his empty cup on the counter. Get some sleep, Dr. Vale. Tomorrow starts whether you're ready or not. He left her alone in the kitchen. Liora finished her coffee, rinsed both cups, and headed back upstairs. This time, when she lay down, sleep came easier. Maybe because she was too tired to keep fighting it, or maybe because some part of her was already adapting to this new reality. The next morning arrived sharp and violent. Liora was in the medical suite checking inventory when Victor appeared in the doorway, his expression tense. Get ready, he said. Meeting went bad. How bad? Bad enough. 20 minutes later, they carried in 2 men. The first was bleeding from his thigh, bullet wound straight through. The second had taken glass to the face, probably from an explosion. Both were conscious, but in serious pain. Liora's training kicked in immediately. Put him on the table, she said, pointing to the leg wound. You, sit in that chair and don't move. She worked fast, cutting away fabric, irrigating the wound. The bullet had gone clean through, missing the femoral artery by less than an inch. Lucky. She clamped bleeding vessels, flushed the wound tract, started him on broad-spectrum antibiotics through an IV. What happened? She asked while working. Ambush, the man ground out through clenched teeth. They were waiting. Who? Volkov's people. The name meant nothing to Liora, but from Victor's expression, it meant something significant. She finished with the leg wound, packed and dressed it, then moved to the second man. His face was a mess of lacerations, some deep enough to need layered suturing. She cleaned and anesthetized each one methodically. Where's Cassian? She asked Victor. Handling it. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. She sutured in silence, her hands steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. This was what she'd signed up for. Bodies and blood and questions she wasn't supposed to ask. The door opened. Cassian walked in, blood on his shirt, a cut above his eyebrow. He looked at the 2 men, then at Liora. How bad? He asked. They'll live. The leg needs monitoring for infection. The face will scar. Then they got off easy. Cassian touched the cut on his forehead, fingers coming away red. This needs your attention too. Liora gestured to a chair. Cassian sat while she cleaned the wound. It wasn't deep, wouldn't need stitches, but it was close to his eye. An inch lower and he could have been blinded. You want to tell me what happened? She asked quietly. Someone leaked our meeting location. We walked into a setup. How many dead? 3 of theirs, none of ours, thanks to you being ready. Liora applied butterfly closures to his forehead. I'm not ready for this. I'm a trauma surgeon, not a battlefield medic. You're both now. That's not how this works. Cassian caught her wrist, his grip gentle but firm. Yes, it is. This is exactly how this works. You patch us up. We go back out. You patch us up again, until the war is over. What war? The one for Chicago. He released her hand. Volkov wants what we have, territory, influence, control. He's been pushing for 6 months. It was only a matter of time before it escalated. Liora stepped back, her heart pounding. You told me this might get messy. You didn't say you were in the middle of an actual war. Would you have said no if I had? She wanted to say yes, wanted to walk out right then. But Emma's debt was gone. Her own loans had vanished overnight. She had nowhere to go that wasn't worse than staying. I need you to be honest with me from now on, Liora said. About the risks, about what I'm walking into. Cassian stood, his gray eyes hard. You want honesty? Fine. This war could last months. People will die. Some of them might be people you save today and watch bleed out tomorrow. You'll see things that will make you question everything you thought you knew about medicine and morality. And there's a very real chance that eventually someone will come after me through you. The last sentence landed like ice water. What? You're my weakness now. The moment anyone realizes how much I need you alive, you become a target. Then send me away. Can't. I need you more than I'm willing to risk. He moved closer, and Liora forced herself not to step back. You're in this now, Dr. Vale. All the way in. The only direction is forward. That's not fair. No, but it's true. He left, taking the two wounded men with him. Victor lingered in the doorway. For what it's worth, he said, the boss doesn't usually care about collateral damage. The fact that he warned you means something. What does it mean? That he actually gives a damn whether you live or die. Victor shrugged. In this world, that's as close to affection as you're going to get. The next 3 weeks became a blur of blood and sleepless nights. Liora treated gunshot wounds, stab wounds, broken bones from fights that sounded like riots. She learned to recognize faces, put names to the men who came through her door. Some were polite. Others looked at her like she was just another tool in Cassian's arsenal. She started noticing patterns, the same injuries in clusters suggesting coordinated attacks. More security around the estate. Cassian spending longer hours in meetings behind closed doors. The house felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. On a Friday night, 3 weeks into her new life, everything shifted. Liora was reviewing patient files in the medical suite when Cassian appeared. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, tension radiating from every line of his body. I need you to do something for me, he said, without preamble. What? Come to dinner tomorrow night, as my guest. Liora blinked. I'm sorry, what? There's a gala, charity event. All the major families will be there. I need you with me. I'm your doctor, not your date. You're whatever I need you to be. And tomorrow night, I need you as a show of stability. Cassian leaned against the doorframe. People are circling. Volkov's pushing rumors that I'm weak, that my organization is fracturing. I need to present a united front. By bringing your doctor to a party? By bringing someone who clearly matters to me, someone I trust enough to have at my side in a room full of enemies. Leora's stomach dropped. You're using me as a chess piece. I'm using every advantage I have, including you. His eyes were hard. This is part of the deal, Dr. Vale. You're part of my world now. That means sometimes you play the part. I didn't agree to this. You agreed to 18 months, everything that comes with it. This is what comes with it. She wanted to argue, but he was right. She'd signed up for this, sold herself into it willingly. Fine, she said, but I don't have anything to wear to a gala. Already handled. Someone will bring options to your room tomorrow afternoon. Of course you did. Cassian pushed off the doorframe. One more thing. At this event, you'll meet my brother, Roman. He's difficult. Difficult how? He thinks I've gone soft, that I'm making sentimental choices that compromise business. He's probably right. And bringing me to this gala proves him right. Probably. But I don't particularly care what Roman thinks anymore. There was something dangerous in his tone, something that suggested a deeper conflict Liora didn't fully understand. She filed it away for later. The next day, true to his word, someone delivered 3 dresses to her room. All designer, all her exact size. She chose the simplest one, a midnight blue gown that felt less like a costume than the others. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. This woman looked like she belonged at expensive events, like she hadn't spent the last 3 weeks elbow-deep in trauma. Victor drove them to the venue, a historic hotel in downtown Chicago that probably cost more per night than Leora's old monthly rent. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and champagne, women in jewels, men in tuxedos, money and power thick enough to choke on. Cassian appeared at her side, devastating in a black tuxedo, and offered his arm. Ready? No. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. They entered together, heads turned, conversations paused. Liora felt every eye in the room assess her, measure her, try to figure out what she was doing on Cassian Moretti's arm. Ignore them, Cassian said quietly. They're trying to intimidate you. It's working. Then pretend it's not. He introduced her to a parade of people whose names she immediately forgot. Business associates, politicians, other crime lords who smiled while mentally calculating how to destroy each other. Liora played her part, smiling and making polite conversation, all while feeling like a fraud. Then Roman Moretti appeared. He looked like Cassian's shadow, similar features but twisted into something crueler. Same dark hair, but styled more aggressively. Same build, but carried with more obvious threat. When he smiled at Liora, there was nothing warm in it. So, this is the famous doctor, Roman said, the one who's got my brother so distracted. Dr. Vale, Cassian said, his voice tight. This is my brother, Roman. Charmed. Roman took Leora's hand, holding it just a fraction too long. Tell me, doctor, what's it like patching up criminals for a living? Similar to patching up anyone else, Liora said evenly. Blood looks the same regardless of occupation. Roman laughed. I like her. She's got spine. He turned to Cassian. But bringing her here? Really? You might as well paint a target on her back. Watch yourself, Cassian warned. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Volkov's probably already got people following her, figuring out what she means to you. Roman leaned closer, voice dropping. You've made her a liability, brother. All because you've grown attached to something you shouldn't. Cassian's entire body went rigid. Liora could feel violence radiating off him, could see people around them subtly moving away. We're done here, Cassian said. Are we? Roman's smile widened. Because from where I stand, we're just getting started. He walked away, leaving tension thick in his wake. Cassian's jaw was clenched so hard Liora thought he might crack teeth. We should go, she said quietly. No, that's what he wants, to prove I'm weak enough to run. Then what do? We stay. We smile. We make it clear that I don't run from anyone, especially not family. They spent another 2 hours at the gala. Liora could feel eyes watching them constantly, could sense calculations happening in every corner. This wasn't just a social event, it was warfare conducted with champagne and small talk. When they finally left, Liora collapsed into the Mercedes with relief. That was hell, she said. Welcome to my world. Cassian loosened his tie, staring out the window. I'm sorry about Roman. He hates me. He hates that you matter. That's different. Does it make a difference? Not really. They drove in silence. Back at the estate, Liora headed straight for her room, desperate to get out of the dress and back into something that felt real. But Cassian caught her arm in the hallway. Thank you, he said. For tonight. I know it wasn't part of what you signed up for. Everything about this isn't what I signed up for. I know, but you're handling it better than I expected. Liora met his eyes. In the dim light, they looked less gray and more like storm clouds. Your brother meant what he said. I'm a liability. You're my choice. There's a difference. What if that choice gets people killed? Then it gets people killed. Cassian's hand was still on her arm, warm through the fabric. I stopped making decisions based on fear a long time ago. That sounds reckless. It is, but it's kept me alive this long. He released her arm and walked away, leaving Liora standing in the hallway trying to understand what just happened. The man was impossible to read. One moment brutal and distant, the next almost vulnerable. She didn't know which version was real. Maybe they both were. That night, Liora lay awake again, her mind replaying Roman's words. You've made her a liability. He was right. She could feel it in the way people looked at her now, like she was an investment Cassian couldn't afford to lose. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt almost comforting, because if she was valuable, she was also protected. And protection was something she hadn't felt in years. She was starting to understand how people got trapped in this world. It wasn't just money or power. It was the seductive promise of safety, even if that safety came wrapped in violence. 2 days later, the attack came. Liora was in the medical suite organizing supplies when she heard gunfire. Not distant, right outside. Glass shattered somewhere in the house. Alarms started screaming. Victor burst through the door, gun drawn. "Stay here," he ordered. "Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me or the boss." "What's happening?" "They're hitting the estate. Volkov's making a move." He was gone before she could respond. Liora locked the door with shaking hands, her heart hammering. More gunfire, closer now, shouting. Something exploded, rattling the walls. She grabbed a scalpel from the tray, gripping it like it could protect her from bullets. Ridiculous, but it was something to hold on to. Minutes stretched into hours. The sounds of fighting continued, sporadic bursts of violence punctuated by terrible silences. Then someone tried the door handle. Liora backed against the far wall, scalpel raised. The handle rattled again. A voice came through. "Dr. Vale, it's Victor. Let me in." She recognized his voice but hesitated. "How do I know it's really you?" "Because if it wasn't, this door would already be open. Now let me the fuck in." She unlocked it. Victor stumbled through, bleeding from his side. Behind him, 2 other guards carried Cassian between them. He'd been shot. Not the shoulder this time. Center mass, left side, blood soaking through his shirt in a spreading stain. "Get him on the table," Liora ordered, her training overriding terror. They laid him down. Cassian's eyes were open but unfocused, skin pale, breathing shallow. Liora cut away his shirt, revealing the entry wound just below his ribs. "Exit wound?" she asked. "No," Victor said. "Bullet's still in." Liora's hands moved automatically, years of emergency training taking over. IV line. Fluids. Check vitals. Blood pressure dropping. Pulse thready. She needed to stop the bleeding, find the bullet, stabilize him before he coded on her table. "How long ago was he shot?" she demanded. 10 minutes. Maybe less. "Get me blood." "O negative. As much as you have." Someone ran. Liora irrigated the wound, trying to see through the blood. The bullet had gone deep, probably into his liver or close to it. If it hit the hepatic artery, he'd bleed out before she could save him. "Cassian," she said loudly, "stay with me. You hear me? Don't you dare die on this table." His eyes focused slightly. "Bossy. Shut up and let me work." She cut deeper, spreading the wound so she could see. Blood welled up faster than she could clear it. Her hands were steady, but her mind was screaming. This was different from every other injury she'd treated. This was Cassian. This mattered in a way she didn't want to examine. "Found it," she said. The bullet had lodged against the 11th rib, missing major vessels by millimeters. Lucky didn't begin to cover it. She extracted it carefully, checking for fragments, then started controlling bleeding vessels. Cassian's blood pressure dipped again. The monitor started alarming. "Don't you die," Liora said again, working faster. "You don't get to make me care and then die." "Wasn't planning on it," he whispered. She repaired tissue, layer by layer, fighting against time and blood loss. Someone arrived with blood products. She started a transfusion, watching his vitals stabilize slightly. Slowly, painfully slowly, she put him back together. By the time she finished closing, 3 hours had passed. Liora's arms ached. Her hands were covered in blood. But Cassian's vitals were stable. Weak, but stable. She collapsed into a chair, adrenaline draining away and leaving her shaking. "He's going to make it?" Victor asked. "If he doesn't get infected. If he rests. If he doesn't do anything stupid." So probably not. Despite everything, Liora almost laughed. Probably not. Victor left to coordinate cleanup. Liora stayed beside Cassian's table, watching him breathe. His eyes opened briefly, finding hers. "You saved my life," he said. "That's what you pay me for." "No, that's not why you did it." He was right, but Liora didn't want to admit it. Didn't want to acknowledge that somewhere in the last month this had stopped being just a job. She cared. Despite every warning, every red flag, every logical reason not to. She cared whether Cassian Moretti lived or died. And that realization terrified her more than any gunfire. "Rest," she said. "We'll talk when you're not half dead." "Promise?" "Promise." His eyes closed again. Liora stayed there through the night, monitoring him, adjusting IVs, checking vitals every 15 minutes. Dawn came slowly, gray light filtering through the reinforced windows. The attack was over. The estate had held. Volkov's men had retreated. But everything had changed, because Liora finally understood what Roman had meant, what Cassian had tried to warn her about. She wasn't just a doctor anymore. She wasn't just an employee. She was all the way in, and there was no way back. Cassian woke screaming. Leora's hands were on him instantly, pressing him back against the pillows before he could tear his stitches. His skin burned with fever, sweat soaking through the sheets she'd changed twice already in the past 6 hours. "Don't move," she said. "You'll rip everything open." "How long?" His voice came out ragged. 36 hours since surgery? You've been in and out." He tried to sit up anyway. Pain made him gasp, face going white. Liora pushed him back down with more force. "I said, don't move. Your liver took trauma. You push too hard and you'll bleed internally." "Need to know what happened. The attack. How many?" "Victor's handling it. You're not handling anything until that fever breaks." Cassian's gray eyes burned into hers, fevered but lucid. "You don't give me orders." "In this room I do. You want to die proving you're in charge. That's your choice. But you don't get to make me watch it." Something in her voice made him stop fighting. He sank back, breathing hard, jaw clenched against pain. "How bad?" he asked. "The estate? 6 of your men wounded, 2 dead. Volkov lost 12. They retreated around dawn." She adjusted his IV, checking the flow. "Victor thinks it was a probe, testing defenses." "He's right. Volkov wanted to see how we'd respond." Cassian closed his eyes. "He also wanted to see if you could keep me alive. Now he knows you can." The implication settled over Liora like cold water. "Making me an even bigger target." "Yes. You could have lied, made it sound less terrible." "I don't lie to you. We're past that." Liora didn't know what to do with that statement. She busied herself checking his wound, changing the dressing. The stitches held. No signs of infection yet, though the fever worried her. She'd started broad-spectrum antibiotics, but his body was fighting hard. "Your brother came by," she said, "while you were unconscious." Cassian's eyes opened. "Roman was here?" "Twice. First time he just stared at you. Didn't say anything. Second time he asked me if you were going to die." "What did you tell him?" "That I wouldn't let you." "And what did he say to that?" Liora hesitated. "He said I was naive, that men like you always die violently. It's just a matter of when." Cassian laughed, which turned into a cough that made him wince. "Roman's not wrong, but I plan to make when as far off as possible." Over the next 3 days, Liora lived in the medical suite. She slept in the chair beside Cassian's bed, waking every 2 hours to check vitals. His fever broke on day 2. By day 3, he was sitting up, eating solid food, annoying her with questions about estate security. "You're the worst patient I've ever had," she said, forcing him to swallow another round of antibiotics. "I've been shot before. I know how this goes." "Then you know you need rest." "I need to get back to work. Volkov's going to see me in here as weakness." "You almost died. That's not weakness, that's biology." Cassian caught her wrist as she turned away. His grip was weak but insistent. "Liora, look at me." She did. His face was still pale, but the sharpness was coming back to his eyes. The fever haze had cleared, leaving something else in its place, something that made her throat tight. "Thank you," he said, "for staying, for keeping me alive when it would have been easier to let me go." "That's not how I work." "I know. That's why I trust you." He released her hand. Liora fled to the other side of the room, pretending to organize supplies that were already organized. Her heart hammered. This was dangerous. The way he looked at her, the way she felt when he did. This was how people got destroyed in his world, by caring about things they couldn't protect. On day 4, Cassian insisted on leaving the medical suite. Liora argued, but Victor sided with him, saying the men needed to see their boss walking and alive. They compromised. Cassian could move around the estate, but no leaving the grounds, no meetings that required standing for more than an hour, and Liora had final say on his activity level. "I'm not a child," Cassian said as she helped him into a clean shirt. "You're acting like one. I'm acting like someone who has an empire to run. Your empire can wait until you're not held together by stitches and spite." He smiled at that, sharp and genuine. "Spite's gotten me this far." That afternoon, Liora was in her room trying to read a medical journal when her phone rang. Emma. They'd been texting but hadn't actually spoken since before Liora left the hospital. Hey, Liora answered. Oh my God, you're alive. I was starting to think you'd been abducted. Emma's voice was bright, oblivious. You haven't called in like a month. I've been busy. New job. Right, the private practice thing. How's that going? Liora looked around her enormous bedroom in a crime lord's estate. Different than expected. Well, I have news. Remember that debt I had? The gambling thing? Emma laughed nervously. It just vanished, like completely disappeared. The guy I owed called and said it was handled. Isn't that insane? Insane, Liora echoed. I don't know who paid it, but I'm not questioning miracles. Maybe the universe is finally cutting me a break. Emma paused. You okay? You sound weird. Just tired. Long hours. You work too hard. When are you coming to visit? I miss you. Soon, Liora lied. I'll let you know when things calm down. They talked for a few more minutes about nothing important. Emma's job at the coffee shop, a guy she was seeing, plans for a weekend trip. Normal life things that felt like they belonged to a different person. When they hung up, Liora sat on the bed staring at her phone. Emma had no idea. No idea that her debt had been erased by a criminal. No idea her sister was living in a mansion built on violence. No idea how close she'd come to being collateral damage. Maybe that was better. Maybe some people got to stay innocent. That evening, Cassian called a meeting in the main conference room. Liora wasn't invited, but Victor found her in the library and told her the boss wanted her there. Why? She asked. Didn't say. Just told me to bring you. The conference room was all dark wood and leather chairs, a table long enough to seat 20. Cassian sat at the head, Roman to his right. Victor and 3 other men Liora recognized as high-ranking members of the organization on his left. Everyone looked up when she entered. Dr. Vale, Cassian said, thank you for joining us. Did I have a choice? Always. Sit. She took the empty chair beside Victor, feeling like she'd walked into a trap. Roman stared at her with undisguised contempt. The other men looked curious. We're discussing response strategy, Cassian said. Volkov's attack was a declaration of war. We need to decide how to answer it. With overwhelming force, Roman said immediately. Hit 3 of his operations tonight. Show him what happens when you come at us. That's predictable, one of the other men argued. He'll be expecting retaliation. So we don't retaliate? Roman's voice dripped sarcasm. We just let him think he can attack our home without consequences? I didn't say that. I said we need to be smart about it. The argument escalated, voices rising, fists hitting the table. Liora sat silent, trying to understand why she was here. This wasn't medical. This was strategy, war planning. Cassian held up a hand. The room fell silent immediately. We hit back, he said, but not where he expects. Roman, you'll coordinate with Carlo on the warehouse district operation. I want it clean and fast, no civilian casualties. Roman's expression darkened. You're putting Carlo in charge? I'm putting you both in charge. Together. I don't need a babysitter. You need someone who thinks before shooting. Carlo provides that. Cassian's tone allowed no argument. Meeting adjourned. Everyone except Dr. Vale out. They filed out, Roman last, throwing Liora a look that promised nothing good. When the door closed, she turned to Cassian. What was that about? I needed them to see you, to understand that you're part of my inner circle now. I'm your doctor. You're more than that, and we both know it. He stood slowly, moving to the window. Roman's planning something. I can feel it. He thinks I've lost focus. That you're making me weak. Maybe he's right, Cassian turned. You think you make me weak? I think having someone you care about is a vulnerability in your world. Roman sees that. Volkov probably sees it too. Let them see it. Let them think I'm weak. He moved closer. Because when they come for you to get to me, they'll realize their mistake. That sounds like you're using me as bait. I'm using you as truth. The truth that I'm not the man I was 6 months ago. That I'm building something different. Different how? Sustainable. Smart. Not just violence for violence's sake. Cassian was close enough now that she could see the shadows under his eyes, the pallor that still hadn't completely faded. You changed something in me, Liora. The night you saved my life the first time. I started questioning why I do this, what I'm building toward. That sounds dangerous, questioning. It is, but it's also necessary. They stood there in the empty conference room, the evening light casting long shadows across the floor. Liora knew she should step back, maintain distance. Remember, this was just a job. But her body wouldn't move. I need to check your stitches, she said finally. They're fine. That's not your call. Back in the medical suite, Liora had him remove his shirt. The wound looked good, healing cleanly, no signs of infection. She ran her fingers along the edges, checking for heat or swelling. You do good work, Cassian said softly. I had good material to work with. You heal fast. Years of practice. Her hands lingered on his skin longer than medically necessary. She could feel his pulse under her fingertips, steady and strong. When she looked up, he was watching her with an intensity that made breathing difficult. This is a bad idea, she whispered. Probably the worst I've ever had. We should stop. We should. Neither of them moved. Then Cassian's phone rang, shattering the moment. He answered, face going hard. When? A pause. How many? Another pause. I'm coming. He hung up. There's been an incident. One of our shipments got hit. 4 men down. I'll get my supplies. No, this is off-site. Victor will take me. You're not healed enough for field work. I don't have a choice. Cassian pulled his shirt back on, wincing. This is the job, Liora. People get hurt. I go. You stay safe here. That's not how this works anymore. Yes, it is. He left before she could argue. Liora stood alone in the medical suite, hands still warm from touching his skin, fear coiling in her stomach like a snake. 2 hours later, Victor called. They were bringing wounded back. 3 men, all critical. Liora prepped the suite, laying out instruments, checking supplies. She was ready when they arrived, but Cassian wasn't with them. Where is he? She demanded. Still at the scene, Victor said, overseeing cleanup. He should be here. He needs rest. Tell him that. She treated the 3 wounded men one by one. Gunshots, blade wounds, one guy with a collapsed lung she had to chest tube. It took hours. By the time she finished, it was past midnight. Cassian still hadn't returned. Liora found Victor in the security office, surrounded by monitors showing every angle of the estate. Where is he? She asked again. Meeting with Roman. They had words about tonight's operation. What kind of words? Victor's expression suggested nothing good. The kind that end badly. Liora headed for the conference room. Voices carried through the closed door, angry and sharp. She pushed it open without knocking. Cassian and Roman stood on opposite sides of the table, both radiating fury. Question my authority in front of the men again, and I'll... Cassian was saying. You'll what? Roman cut him off. Shoot your own brother? Go ahead. Prove you've completely lost perspective. I'm trying to build something that lasts. You just want to burn everything down. I want to survive. You're so busy playing house with your pet doctor that you've forgotten we're in a war. Cassian's hand moved to his side, toward where Liora knew he kept a gun. She stepped between them before thinking it through. Stop, she said. Both of you. Roman laughed. Look at that. She thinks she has a say. Liora, get out, Cassian said quietly. No, not until you both calm down. This doesn't concern you, Doctor, Roman said. This is family business. She is family business now, Cassian said. The words hung in the air. Roman's face went from angry to something darker, something calculating. Is she? Roman moved around the table slowly. Because family is blood. Family is earned through loyalty and sacrifice. She's just an employee, a convenient weakness you're too blind to see. Roman, I'm warning you. You're warning me? I'm not the one forgetting what we are, what this empire was built on. Father would be ashamed of what you've become. Father was a paranoid drunk who trusted no one and died alone. I'm not following his path. No, you're following hers, Tom, Roman pointed at Liora. And it's going to get you killed. He stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Cassian stood rigid, hands clenched into fists, breathing hard. Are you okay? Liora asked quietly. No, He moved to the window, staring out at the dark grounds. He's right, about some of it. I am distracted. I am making choices I wouldn't have made a year ago. Is that bad? In this world? It's fatal. Cassian turned to face her. But I can't stop. Can't go back to what I was before you. And that terrifies me more than Volkov's entire army. Liora didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to process the vulnerability in his voice. This man who commanded killers and built empires on fear was afraid. Of her. Of what she represented. I should go, she said. Stay. Cassian, please, just stay. Don't make me be alone with this. So she stayed. They sat in the conference room until dawn, not talking much, just existing in the same space. When the sun finally rose, Cassian stood stiffly, his wound clearly bothering him, though he tried to hide it. Get some rest, Liora said. Real rest. In a bed. Promise me something first. What? If this goes bad, if Volkov or Roman or anyone else comes for me and I don't make it, promise you'll run, get out of Chicago, start over somewhere they can't find you. You're not going to die? Promise me anyway. Liora met his eyes. I promise. It was a lie. They both knew it. Because she was already in too deep to run, already invested in a way that defied logic or self-preservation. The next 48 hours passed in tense quiet. Cassian threw himself back into work despite Liora's protests. Roman avoided him completely. The estate felt like a powder keg waiting for a spark. It came on a Friday evening. Liora was in the library reading when Victor found her, his face grim. You need to come with me. Now. What happened? Just come. He led her down to a part of the estate she'd never seen before. Basement level, concrete walls. The smell of blood and fear thick in the air. At the end of a hallway was a room with a steel door. Victor pushed it open. Inside, tied to a chair, was a man Liora recognized from the gala, one of Cassian's business associates. Blood dripped from his nose. His face was swollen from beating. Cassian stood in the corner, arms crossed, expression cold. Tell her, he said to the man. The man's eyes flickered to Liora. I don't know what you want me to say. Tell her who you work for. You. I work for you. And? The man's face crumpled. And Volkov. I work for both. I've been feeding him information for 3 months. Liora's stomach dropped. What kind of information? Shipment schedules, security rotations, meeting locations. The man's voice broke. I didn't have a choice. He had my family. There's always a choice, Cassian said coldly. You chose to betray us. I chose to keep my wife and daughter alive. And how many of my men died because of your choices? The man had no answer. Cassian turned to Liora. He's the one who told Volkov about our meeting, the ambush that got me shot. He's responsible for the attack on the estate. For everything. Liora stared at the bloodied man in the chair. This was someone she'd smiled at during the gala, someone who'd seemed harmless, and he'd been selling them out the entire time. What are you going to do with him? She asked. What needs to be done? Understanding hit her like ice. You're going to kill him. Yes, you can't. I can and I will. This is how this world works, Liora. Betrayal has consequences. He said Volkov has his family. And that's tragic. But it doesn't change what he did. It doesn't bring back the men who died because of him. Liora looked at the man again. He was crying now, quiet sobs shaking his shoulders. She thought about medical ethics. First, do no harm. But what did harm mean in this context? Letting a traitor live to betray again? Or watching someone execute a man who'd been coerced? I can't be part of this, she said. You already are. The moment you started working for me, you became part of all of it. The good and the ugly. This isn't ugly. This is murder. No, this is justice. Whose justice? Yours? Cassian's jaw tightened. If you can't stomach this, leave. Go upstairs, I'll handle it. And then what? Pretend it didn't happen? Pretend you're not a killer? I never pretended to be anything other than what I am. They stared at each other across the room, the man in the chair forgotten between them. Liora's hands were shaking. Everything she'd told herself about this being just a job, just survival, just 18 months crumbled away. This was real. This was who Cassian was underneath the expensive suits and careful words. "I need air," she said. "Liora?" She walked out before he could finish. Victor followed her down the hallway, but she shook her head, needing to be alone. She made it to the main floor, through the house, out to the gardens before the shaking turned into full tremors. Behind her, somewhere deep in the basement, a single gunshot echoed. Liora sank onto a bench, pulling her knees to her chest. The man was dead. Cassian had killed him, and she'd walked away rather than trying to stop it. What did that make her? She didn't hear footsteps until Cassian sat down beside her. He smelled like gunpowder. Blood stained his right sleeve. "He's dead," he said quietly. "I figured. I had to." "I know." They sat in silence. Above them, stars were coming out, cold and distant. "I'm not asking you to understand," Cassian said, "or approve. I'm just asking you not to hate me for it." "I don't hate you." Liora's voice came out raw. "I hate that you're right, that in your world that probably was the only choice. It was. And I hate that I'm starting to accept that, to see the logic in violence." Cassian turned to look at her. "You're adapting, surviving. I'm changing into something I don't recognize. Or maybe you're just seeing parts of yourself that were already there, the parts that understand that sometimes there are no good choices, only choices that let you keep living." Liora wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but she couldn't, because she'd walked away from that room knowing what would happen, and she hadn't stopped it. Some part of her had accepted it as necessary. "I need to know something," she said. "Your brother, Roman, does he know about the traitor?" "Yes. I told him before I called you down." "What did he say?" Cassian's expression went dark. "He said he'd known for weeks." The words took a moment to land. "He knew? And didn't tell you?" "Apparently he wanted to see how long it took me to figure it out, test whether I was still sharp enough to lead." "That's insane. People died because—" She stopped. Understanding crashed over her like a wave. Roman had known, had let the betrayal continue, had let Cassian get shot, let the estate get attacked, all to prove a point. And if Cassian had died during any of it, Roman would have taken control. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Now you understand." Liora stood, pacing, mind racing. "He's not just difficult. He's actively trying to undermine you, to get you killed. Yes. And you're letting him stay here, in your house, around your people. I'm keeping him close, where I can watch him. That's not strategy. That's suicide." Cassian stood too, moving to face her. "What would you have me do? Kill my own brother? Exile him and start a civil war that tears the organization apart?" "I don't know, but you can't just wait for him to make his move." "I'm not waiting. I'm preparing." He took her hands, his grip warm and steady. "I know this is a lot. I know you didn't sign up for family betrayals and moral compromises, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Liora looked at him. Really looked. Past the crime lord, past the violence, to the man underneath who was trying to hold an empire together while his own brother plotted against him. Who'd shot a traitor without hesitation, but came to find her afterward because he needed her not to hate him for it. "I don't think trust is the word for what I feel," she said slowly. "Then what is?" She couldn't say it. Couldn't admit that somewhere in the past 2 months, trust had evolved into something deeper. Something that defied every survival instinct she had. "Ask me again when we're not standing in a garden after you just killed someone," she said instead. Cassian smiled, sad and tired. "Fair enough." They walked back to the house together. At the entrance, Victor was waiting. "Boss," he said, "we have a problem." "What now?" "Roman's gone. Left her about 20 minutes ago with 6 men. Said he had business to handle." Cassian's entire body went rigid. "Did he say what business?" "No, but he took the men from the North Quarter, the ones loyal to him." "Fuck." Cassian pulled out his phone, made a call. It went to voicemail. He tried again, same result. "What's happening?" Liora asked. "Roman's making his move. Whatever he's planning, it's happening now." Cassian turned to Victor. "Get everyone on alert. Double the guards. No one goes in or out without my authorization." "Yes, sir." Victor disappeared. Cassian stood there, phone in hand, jaw clenched so hard Liora worried he'd crack teeth. "We need to find him," she said. "He doesn't want to be found. Not until it's too late." "Too late for what?" Cassian met her eyes. The look in them made her blood run cold. "For me to stop him from destroying everything." Before Liora could respond, the power went out. The entire estate plunged into darkness. Emergency lights flickered on a moment later, casting everything in sickly red. Alarms started blaring. "That's not the backup generator," Cassian said. "That's—" An explosion rocked the east wing. The floor shook. Glass shattered somewhere distant. More alarms, shouting, gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Victor's voice came through on Cassian's radio. "We're under attack. Multiple breach points. They came through the north and east perimeters." "Volkov?" Cassian demanded. "Can't confirm, but boss, they knew exactly where to hit. Where we were weakest." Cassian's face went white with fury. "Roman told them." Understanding clicked. Roman hadn't just left. He'd sold them out. Given Volkov the security information needed to hit the estate at its most vulnerable points. This wasn't just betrayal. This was orchestrated destruction. Another explosion. Closer this time. The medical suite. They were targeting places Cassian would be, places that mattered. "We need to get you somewhere safe," Liora said. "No, I need to fight. This is my house, my people. You're still recovering. If you go out there, I'll do what needs to be done." Cassian grabbed a gun from the desk, checked the magazine. "Stay in the panic room. Victor will take you." "I'm not leaving you." "That's not a request." "And I'm not your soldier." They glared at each other while the house came apart around them. More gunfire, more shouting, the sounds of war getting closer. Then someone screamed her name, Emma's voice, terrified and close. Leora's heart stopped. No, that's not possible." But the scream came again. "Liora, help me!" Cassian's expression went from determined to horrified. "That's a trap. That's my sister. They're using a recording, trying to draw you out. What if it's real? What if Roman—" She couldn't finish. The thought was too terrible. "Liora, listen to me. Your sister is safe. I have people watching her. She's not here." "How do you know?" "Because I made sure. The moment I realized Roman was a threat, I put protection on her. She's at her apartment, surrounded by guards she doesn't know are there." Emma screamed again, the sound full of terror. "That's not a recording," Liora said. "I know my sister's voice." She ran before Cassian could stop her. Out of the office, down the hallway toward the scream. Behind her, she heard him cursing, following, calling her name. The scream led her to the main entry hall. Emma stood in the center of the marble floor, hands zip-tied in front of her, tears streaming down her face. A man Liora didn't recognize held a gun to her head, and behind him, smiling, stood Roman Moretti. "Hello, Doctor," Roman said. "Thanks for joining us. I was worried you'd be smart enough to hide." Liora stopped at the base of the stairs. Cassian appeared beside her, gun raised. "Let her go," Cassian said, voice deadly calm. "Can't do that, brother. She's leverage. You understand leverage." Roman gestured to Emma, who whimpered. "Your doctor cares about this girl. You care about your doctor. Simple math. You brought a civilian into this, broke every rule we have. You broke the rules first when you made her part of our world." Roman's smile widened. "See? That's your weakness. You care. About her, about morality, about building something better. All that caring made you soft, made you vulnerable." "Roman, please," Emma sobbed. "I don't understand what's happening." "Shut up," the gunman said, pressing the barrel harder against her temple. Leora's medical mind kicked in, assessing. Emma was terrified but physically unharmed. The gun was a threat, but not an immediate one as long as Roman wanted something. The man holding her was tense but not twitchy, probably professional, which meant he'd only shoot on Roman's order. "What do you want?" Cassian asked. "Simple. You step down, sign over control of the organization to me, walk away and live. And if I don't, I kill her." Roman nodded to Emma. "Then I kill the doctor. Then I kill you, and I take control anyway. But this way, you get to choose how many people die." Cassian's gun never wavered. "You've already sided with Volkov. This isn't about control. This is about destroying everything Father built. Father built an empire on fear. You're trying to build one on sentiment. It won't last. I'm just speeding up the inevitable." More gunfire echoed through the house. The fighting was getting closer. Roman glanced toward the sound, expression tightening. "Decide now," he said, "or she dies." Liora looked at Emma, her baby sister who'd never hurt anyone, who'd made stupid mistakes but didn't deserve to die for them. Then at Cassian, who was calculating odds, weighing options, trying to find a way to save everyone. There wasn't one. This was Roman's endgame, and someone was going to die tonight. Liora took a step forward. "Let her go. Take me instead." "Liora, no," Cassian said sharply. "She's not part of this. I am. You want leverage against Cassian. I'm better leverage." Roman considered this. "She's not wrong. The sister means nothing to me. But you, Doctor? You mean everything to him." "Don't," Cassian said, and there was something raw in his voice, desperate. Liora met his eyes, tried to tell him without words that this was the only way, that Emma got to stay innocent, that some prices were worth paying. "Let my sister go," she said to Roman. "I'll come quietly." Roman smiled. "See, brother? That's what love looks like. Sacrifice. Stupid, pointless sacrifice." He nodded to the gunman. Emma was released, stumbling forward. She ran to Liora, grabbing her. "What's happening? Who are these people?" "It's okay," Liora said, even though it wasn't. "Go with him." She pointed to Victor, who'd appeared at the top of the stairs. "He'll keep you safe." "I don't understand." "You don't need to. Just go." Victor collected Emma, who looked back with confusion and terror. They disappeared up the stairs. At least Emma would live. At least that was something. "Now come here, Doctor," Roman said. Liora walked forward. Cassian moved to stop her, but she shook her head. If he interfered, Roman would kill them both out of spite. This was the only play that kept anyone alive. The gunman grabbed her arm, pulling her toward Roman. The gun that had been at Emma's head now pressed against Leora's spine. "There," Roman said, satisfied. "Now we're getting somewhere." "You have what you want," Cassian said. "Let's talk terms." "No terms. I already told you. Sign everything over or she dies." "You'll kill her anyway." "Probably. But this way you get to hope I won't." Cassian's face was stone, but Liora could see the war behind his eyes. He was trapped. Whatever choice he made, someone lost. If he gave up control, Roman would destroy the organization and probably kill them both anyway. If he refused, Liora died and Roman would kill him in the fight that followed. No good options, just varying degrees of loss. "I need time," Cassian said. "Cassian, you have until I count to 10. Roman pulled out his own gun. "And Doctor? I'd pray if I were you, but I know you don't, so maybe just hope your boss cares enough to save you." He started counting. 1. Leora's pulse hammered in her ears. 2. Cassian's gun was still raised, but his hand shook slightly. 3. This was it. The moment everything broke. 4. Roman's smile was cruel, victorious. 5. Cassian's eyes met Leora's across the space. In them she saw grief, rage, love. 6. She'd never told him, never admitted what he'd become to her. 7. Too late now. 8. Roman's finger tightened on the trigger. 9. And Cassian lowered his gun. "Stop," he said, voice breaking. "I'll sign." Roman laughed. "There it is, proof you're not fit to lead. You'd give up everything for one person." "Yes." Father would be ashamed. Father was a monster. I'd rather die human than live like him. Roman opened his mouth to respond, but a gunshot rang out from the upstairs balcony. The bullet hit the gunman, holding Liora square in the head. He dropped instantly. Liora dove sideways as Victor kept firing, covering Roman and his men. Cassian moved simultaneously, grabbing Liora and pulling her behind the staircase as the entry hall exploded into chaos. Bullets tore through marble and wood. Men poured in from multiple hallways, some Romans, some Cassians, impossible to tell which in the confusion. Liora pressed against Cassian's chest, feeling his heart hammer, his body wrapped around hers protectively. "Stay down," he ordered. "Where's Emma?" "Safe. Victor has her." The firefight raged. Through the gaps in the stairs, Liora saw Roman retreating toward the east exit, shooting as he went. Then he was gone, disappearing into the smoke and chaos. Gradually, the gunfire decreased. Victor called out that the attackers were retreating. Cassian slowly released Liora, checking her for injuries. "Are you hit?" "No." "Are you?" "No." He cupped her face, staring at her like he was memorizing every detail. "You stupid, brave, incredible idiot. You could have died." "So could Emma." "I told you I had people on her. And I told you I wasn't going to bet her life on that." Cassian kissed her then, hard and desperate, his hands tangling in her hair. It lasted 3 seconds before he pulled back. "We're not done," he said. "Roman's gone, but he'll be back. With Volkov. With an army. Then we prepare." "We? You're planning to fight?" Liora looked around at the destroyed entry hall, the bodies, the blood. Her medical oath demanded she help the wounded. Her instincts demanded she run. But something else, something that had been building since the first night Cassian showed up bleeding at her door, demanded she stay. "I'm not leaving," she said. "This is going to get worse before it gets better." "I know. People are going to die. Maybe us." "I know that too." Cassian searched her face. "You've changed since you came here. So have you. Not sure if that's good or bad." "Neither am I." Liora touched the wound under his shirt, feeling the raised edges of stitches. "But we're both still alive. That has to count for something." "Counts for everything." Around them, the house was devastated. Cassian's organization was fractured. Roman had allied with their worst enemy. The next attack would be worse, probably fatal. But in that moment, standing in the ruins of what used to be safety, Liora realized she'd already made her choice. Not out of obligation, not out of survival, out of something more dangerous than either. She'd chosen Cassian Moretti, chosen his war, chosen to stand beside him, even knowing how it would probably end. And there was no going back from that, not now, not ever. The house was a war zone. Liora moved through the wreckage with Victor at her side, cataloging the damage. 7 dead, 12 wounded. The east wing was gone, collapsed from the explosion. The north perimeter had been breached in 3 places. Glass and blood covered everything. Emma sat in the library wrapped in a blanket, shaking. Liora had checked her twice already. No injuries, just shock. Victor's men stood guard at every entrance, weapons ready. "I don't understand," Emma said for the 10th time. "Why did those men take me? Who were they?" "Wrong place, wrong time," Liora lied. "They were trying to rob the estate. That man called you doctor, said you were leverage. He was confused, desperate. People say things." Emma looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. "You're lying. You've been lying since you took this job. What are you really doing here?" Liora couldn't answer, couldn't explain that she'd traded her soul to keep Emma safe, only to have her sister dragged into danger anyway. Couldn't say that the man she was falling for had built his empire on violence and blood. "I'm keeping you alive," Liora said finally. "That's all that matters." "By working for criminals?" "By doing what I have to." Emma's face crumpled. "I thought the debt disappearing was a miracle." "It wasn't, was it? You paid it somehow. That's why you're here." "Smart girl. Always had been, under the recklessness." "Yeah," Liora admitted. "I paid it." "How much did it cost you?" "Everything," Liora thought, but she said, "Nothing I wasn't willing to give." Cassian appeared in the doorway. Blood stained his shirt, but he moved steadily. The wound hadn't reopened. Small mercies. "We need to talk," he said to Liora. "Strategy room, now." She followed him through hallways still echoing with damage. In the strategy room, maps covered the table. Victor stood over them with 3 other men Liora recognized as Cassian's inner circle. All of them looked grim. "Roman's with Volkov," Victor said without preamble. "We have confirmation. He walked right into their headquarters 2 hours ago." "How many men did he take?" Cassian asked. 23, all from the north and west quarters. The ones who were always more loyal to him than you. So we lost a quarter of our force in one night." "Yes." Cassian studied the maps. Red pins marked Volkov's known territories. Blue pins marked theirs. The red had been spreading for months, encroaching on blue spaces. Now, with Roman's defection, entire sections would flip red overnight. "They'll hit us again," one of the men said. "Soon. They know we're wounded. Not just wounded, fractured. Cassian tapped the map. Roman knows every defensive position, every weapons cache, every safe house. He'll give Volkov everything. So what do? We move first. The room went silent. Victor leaned forward. You want to attack? Now? While we're still bleeding? Especially now. They'll expect us to hunker down, lick our wounds, prepare for defense. Cassian's eyes were hard. We hit them where they feel safest. Make them understand that coming after my home was a mistake they'll regret. That's suicide, another man said. Volkov's got twice our numbers, 3 times if you count Roman's defectors. Numbers don't matter if we're smart. Cassian looked at each of them. Roman thinks he knows how I operate, but he doesn't know the new me, the one who's learned to be unpredictable. He started outlining a plan. 3 simultaneous strikes on Volkov's operations, the warehouses, the gambling halls, the import facilities. Burn them all in one night. Force Volkov to spread thin trying to defend everything. And while he's distracted, Cassian said, I go after Roman. Where? Victor asked. The Opera House. Father's old territory. Roman always loved that place. He'll feel untouchable there, surrounded by Volkov's men. That's a trap. Of course it is. But it's also the only way to end this. If I don't face Roman, this war continues until one of us is dead anyway. Better to choose the time and place. Liora listened in growing horror. This wasn't strategy. This was a suicide mission disguised as offense. Cassian was going to walk into an ambush because his pride wouldn't let him hide. How many men can we spare for your strike? Victor asked. 10, maybe 12. The rest need to hit the other targets. 12 men against Volkov's entire force? Surprise is worth more than numbers. The meeting continued for another hour. Attack times, contingencies, evacuation routes, if everything went wrong. Liora stood against the wall, invisible, watching Cassian coordinate his own potential death with military precision. When the others finally left, she moved to the table. This is insane, she said. It's necessary. You're going to get yourself killed. Maybe. But if I don't do this, Roman and Volkov will keep coming. They'll tear apart everything until there's nothing left. At least this way, I control how it ends. By dying in an opera house? Cassian looked at her. By making sure if I die, I take them with me. That's not strategy. That's revenge. It's both. He moved around the table, standing close enough that she could smell gunpowder and sweat. Roman crossed a line tonight. He brought your sister into this, used an innocent person as a weapon. That breaks every rule we have. So you're going to break him. I'm going to end him, one way or another. Liora wanted to argue more, but recognized the futility. Cassian had made his choice. The only question was whether she'd let him walk into it alone. When? She asked. Tomorrow night. The other strikes happen at 9. I move on the Opera House at 10. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. You'll need medical support. Someone to keep you alive if it goes wrong. Victor can handle basic field medicine. Victor's not a surgeon. I am. Liora stepped closer. You said I'm part of this now, all the way in. That means I don't sit on the sidelines while you go die. Liora, stop about that, boss. Stop. No. You don't get to protect me after everything. I've sewn you back together twice. I've chosen to stand here when I could run. I've earned the right to see this through. They stared at each other. Cassian's jaw worked like he was fighting words that wanted to escape. If you die tomorrow, Liora said quietly, I need to be there. I need to know I did everything I could. And if we both die, then at least I won't have to live with leaving you. Something in Cassian's expression fractured. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. His body shook slightly, whether from exhaustion or emotion, Liora couldn't tell. I was supposed to keep you safe, he said against her temple. That was the deal. Clear your debts, give you a better life, not drag you into battles. Plans change. You deserve better than this? Maybe, but this is what I chose. He kissed her then, not desperate like before. Slow, deliberate, like he was memorizing the taste of her mouth, the feel of her body against his, like this might be the last time. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark. If tomorrow goes wrong, if I don't make it, Promise me you'll get Emma and run. Victor has money set aside, new identities, everything you need to disappear. Don't talk like that. Promise me. I promise, Liora lied for the second time, because she already knew. If Cassian died tomorrow, she wasn't running. She was burning down whoever killed him. Revenge wasn't logical, wasn't smart, but it was the only response that made sense. She'd become someone she didn't recognize, and maybe that was okay. The next day moved in slow motion. Liora checked and rechecked her medical supplies. Field trauma kit, hemostatic agents, sutures, chest seals, combat tourniquets, everything she'd need to treat catastrophic injuries in hostile conditions. She'd never done field medicine, never worked outside a controlled environment. Tomorrow would be a brutal education. Emma was being moved to a safe house across the city. She fought it, demanding answers Liora couldn't give. I'm your sister, Emma said as Victor's men prepared the car. I deserve to know what's happening. You deserve to live, Liora said. That's all I can give you right now. When this is over, I'll explain everything. I swear. Emma searched her face. You're different, harder. Is that what this place did to you? This place showed me who I already was. I don't believe that. You don't have to. They hugged. Emma whispered, Don't die, against her shoulder. Liora couldn't promise that, so she said nothing. The car pulled away, taking Emma toward safety. At least one of them would survive this. That evening, Cassian gathered his strike team. 12 men, all veterans of previous operations. Victor ran through the plan again. Approach from the maintenance tunnels beneath the Opera House. Enter through the basement. Clear level by level until they reached the main theater where Roman would be. He'll have at least 30 men, Victor warned. Probably more. This is about speed and brutality. We don't give them time to coordinate defense. The men checked weapons. Loaded magazines. The sound of metal sliding into place filled the armory. Liora stood apart, medical kit heavy on her back, feeling distinctly out of place among these professionals who killed for a living. Cassian found her in the hallway after the briefing. Last chance to stay behind, he said. Not happening. You're going to see things tonight, things you can't unsee. I've been seeing them for months. Tonight's just more honest about it. He didn't argue. Just took her hand, pressed something cold into her palm. A gun. Small. Compact. Safety's here, he said, showing her. Point and pull the trigger. It's loaded. 8 rounds. I don't know how to use this. You aim center mass and pull until it stops shooting. That's all you need to know. His eyes were serious. You're walking into a war zone. I need you armed. Liora stared at the weapon. It felt wrong in her hand. Foreign. But she closed her fingers around it anyway, tucking it into her waistband. I've spent my whole life saving people, she said. Now I'm carrying a gun to kill them. Only if they try to kill you first. That makes it better? It makes it survival. At 9 p.m., the other strike teams left. Liora watched convoys disappear into Chicago's night, heading toward their targets. In 1 hour, 3 different parts of Volkov's empire would be burning. The war would escalate beyond any hope of peaceful resolution. At 9:45, Cassian's team loaded into unmarked vans. The drive across the city felt surreal. Normal people walked streets, ate dinner, lived lives, completely unaware that a private war was about to explode in their midst. Liora sat between Victor and another guard, medical kit on her lap, gun pressing against her spine. Cassian rode in the lead van. She could see the back of his head through the window. He sat perfectly still, focused, already in combat mode. They parked 3 blocks from the Opera House, approached on foot through alleys and service roads. The building loomed ahead, a relic from Chicago's golden age. Ornate architecture, marble columns, now owned by the Moretti family's legacy trust, though everyone knew it was a front for criminal activity. Victor led them to a maintenance entrance, lock picked in seconds. They descended into tunnels that smelled like mold and old water. Concrete walls pressed close, single file through narrow passages lit by emergency lights that barely worked. Liora's heart hammered. This was happening. They were actually doing this. The tunnel opened into a basement storage area. Above them, footsteps. Voices. Cassian raised a fist. Everyone stopped. He gestured. 2 men moved forward, opened the door to the stairwell, disappeared inside. 30 seconds of silence. then two soft cracks. Suppressed gunfire. The team moved, upstairs, into a service corridor. Two guards lay dead, blood spreading across linoleum. Liora forced herself not to stare, not to think about the fact that those men had been alive 60 seconds ago. They cleared the lower level methodically. More guards, more suppressed shots, bodies accumulating. Victor and his men moved like machinery, efficient and deadly. Cassian stayed in the middle, protected, though Liora could see he hated it. Voices echoed from above. Someone had heard something. The alarm was about to be raised. "Go loud," Cassian ordered. The team abandoned stealth, burst through doors with weapons raised. Full automatic fire tore through the next level. Men screamed, glass shattered. Liora pressed against a wall, trying to stay small, stay invisible. A guard appeared from a side room, saw her, raised his gun. Training overrode thought. Liora drew her weapon, pointed center mass like Cassian taught her, pulled the trigger. The recoil shocked her. The guard's chest exploded red. He fell backward, dead before he hit the ground. Liora stared at what she'd done. The gun was hot in her hand, smoke curled from the barrel. She'd killed someone. Actually killed another human being. Victor grabbed her arm. "Move. Now." She moved. Through corridors filling with gunfire, past more bodies, some theirs, most Volkov's. They reached the main level, the grand lobby with its chandeliers and marble floors. At least 20 hostiles waited, using columns and overturned furniture as cover. The firefight was deafening. Bullets tore through plaster and wood. Chandeliers crashed down in explosions of crystal. Liora crouched behind a Baroque sofa that wouldn't stop anything but gave the illusion of safety. She clutched her medical kit, waiting for someone to need her. Victor took her round to the shoulder, spun, went down. Liora was moving before thinking. Dragged him behind better cover, ripped open his vest. Entry wound high right shoulder, no exit wound, bullet still in. "Hold still," she ordered. "Kinda busy," Victor ground out, still shooting with his left hand. She packed the wound, pressure bandage applied in seconds. Combat medicine, quick and dirty. He'd need surgery later, but this would keep him functional. "You're good," she said. Good's relative. The firefight raged. Cassian's men advanced methodically, clearing positions. Volkov's people retreated toward the theater, exactly as planned. They were being herded. Finally, the lobby fell silent, except for ringing ears and dying groans. 8 of Cassian's team remained standing. 4 wounded, including Victor. 2 dead, left where they fell because there was no time for retrieval. The theater doors loomed ahead. Ornate, massive. Behind them, the final confrontation waited. Cassian checked his weapon, then looked at his remaining men. "Everyone clear on the plan?" Nods all around. "Then let's end this." He kicked open the doors. The Opera House Theater was a cathedral of velvet and gold. Tiered balconies rose toward a painted ceiling. The stage dominated the far end, curtains drawn back to reveal empty space. And everywhere, armed men. At least 40 that Liora could see, positioned throughout the seating areas and balconies. On stage, lit by a single spotlight, stood Roman Moretti. Next to him, Alexei Volkov, older, scarred, the kind of man who looked like violence incarnate. "Brother," Roman called out, his voice echoing. "Glad you could make it. I was worried you'd lost your nerve." "Just wanted to give you time to dig your grave," Cassian said, walking down the center aisle. His team fanned out, weapons raised but hopelessly outnumbered. "This is your play?" Roman laughed. 12 men against my army? You're more desperate than I thought." "Desperate people are dangerous. Desperate people are dead," Roman gestured. Armed men appeared from everywhere, surrounding Cassian's team. "You walked right into it, just like I knew you would. Pride always was your weakness." Cassian stopped 20 feet from the stage. "You think I didn't know this was a trap? I think you knew and came anyway, because you're sentimental, because you need to face me personally rather than send someone else." "You're right. I do need to face you, because you broke the only rule Father actually cared about. You brought innocence into our war." "That doctor's sister?" Roman shrugged. "Collateral damage." "No. A line crossed, and now there's no going back." Volkov spoke for the first time, his accent thick. "Enough family drama. Cassian Moretti, you're finished. Your operations are burning as we speak. Your men are defecting. Your empire is dust. Surrender now and I'll make your death quick. Tempting offer, Cassian said, but I'll pass. He pulled a detonator from his pocket. Roman's smile faltered. What is that? Insurance. See, I knew you'd set this trap. Knew you'd gather all your forces here to watch me die. So I made sure if I go down, I'm taking this entire building with me. Cassian held up the detonator. Charges placed throughout the foundation. One button, and this whole place comes down on our heads. You're bluffing. Am I? Cassian's thumb hovered over the trigger. You willing to bet your life on that? The theater went silent. Every gun stayed raised, but no one fired. Roman's expression shifted from confident to uncertain. You'd kill yourself, he asked. To end you? Absolutely. That's insane. That's family. Liora watched from the back of the theater, pressed against the wall with her medical kit. She'd known Cassian was planning something, but not this. Not mutual destruction. Her hand found the gun at her spine, though what good it would do against 40 armed men, she didn't know. Volkov stepped forward. This changes nothing. You press that button, we all die. You don't press it, my men kill you. Either way, you lose. Maybe, but at least I'll have the satisfaction of taking you both with me. What about her? Roman pointed toward Liora. You're a precious doctor. She dies too? Cassian's jaw tightened, but he didn't look back. She knew the risks. Did she? Did she know you'd sacrifice her to win a pissing contest? This isn't about winning. It's about making sure you never hurt anyone I care about again. Roman laughed. You think killing me stops this? Volkov has sons, brothers, an entire organization that will hunt down everyone you love. You're not ending anything. You're just making it worse. Then I guess we all go down together. Cassian's thumb pressed the detonator. Nothing happened. Roman's smile returned, vicious and triumphant. You stupid, sentimental fool. You think I didn't plan for this? I had our people sweep the building an hour ago, found all your charges, disarmed them. Cassian's face went blank. The bluff had failed. So here we are, Roman said. You, outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Me, holding all the cards. Any last words before I end this? Cassian looked at him, really looked. At the brother who'd betrayed everything, who'd sold out family for power, who'd become exactly what their father was. Yeah, Cassian said. I'm sorry. Sorry? That you never understood what we could have built together, that you chose this instead. Spare me the sentiment. Roman raised his gun. Goodbye, brother. The gunshot came from an unexpected direction, not from Roman, from Volkov. The bullet hit Roman in the chest, dropping him instantly. Everyone froze. Volkov stood with his weapon still raised, smoke curling from the barrel. What? Roman gasped from the floor. You think I needed you alive? Volkov said. You were useful for information, for breaking Cassian's organization from inside. But now, you're just another loose end. He fired again. Roman's body jerked. Blood pooled across the stage. Cassian watched his brother die, expression unreadable. Volkov turned his gun toward Cassian. And now, with your brother gone, with your organization destroyed, you have nothing left. So I'll ask one more time, surrender or die. Those are the same thing in your world. Yes, but one is faster. Liora saw Cassian's shoulders straighten, saw him accept what was coming. He was going to die here. In this opera house, surrounded by enemies, and he'd do it standing. She couldn't let that happen. Before thought caught up with action, Liora raised her gun, aimed at Volkov, fired. The shot went wide, hitting the stage 6 feet from his position, but it broke the stalemate. Everyone moved at once. Cassian's team opened fire. Volkov's men returned it. The theater exploded into chaos. Bullets tore through velvet seats and gilded railings. People screamed. Bodies fell. Liora crouched low, firing blindly toward the stage, not aiming, just trying to create confusion. Her gun clicked empty after 8 rounds. She dropped it, grabbed her medical kit. Someone crashed down beside her. One of Cassian's men, bleeding from his leg. She went to work immediately. Tourniquet applied above the wound, pressure on the bleeding. He kept shooting over her head while she saved his life. The firefight was apocalyptic, the beautiful theater becoming a slaughterhouse. Liora lost track of time, working on automatic. Another wounded man appeared, then another. She treated them in the middle of combat, hands covered in blood, ears ringing from gunfire. Through the chaos, she saw Cassian fighting toward the stage, saw him take down 3 men, saw him reach the stairs. Volkov was retreating, firing as he went. Cassian followed, relentless. They disappeared through a backstage door. Liora left her patient, ran toward the stage. Victor tried to stop her, but she shoved past him. Through the door, into dark corridors behind the theater, following sounds of fighting deeper into the building. She found them in the old rehearsal hall. Cassian and Volkov locked in hand-to-hand combat, both having lost their weapons. They crashed through old equipment, fists and blood, pure violence. Volkov was bigger, stronger. He slammed Cassian against a wall hard enough to crack plaster. Cassian's wound from days ago had reopened. Blood soaked his shirt. Liora looked around frantically, found a piece of broken railing, metal, heavy. She picked it up, moved closer. Volkov had Cassian by the throat, lifting him off the ground. "You should have stayed small, should have known your place." Cassian's face was turning purple. His fingers clawed uselessly at Volkov's grip. Liora swung the railing with everything she had. It connected with Volkov's skull with a sickening crack. He dropped Cassian, stumbling. Blood poured from his temple. Cassian fell gasping to his knees. Liora raised the railing again, but Volkov was already moving, fast despite the head wound. He grabbed her, threw her against a wall. Her medical kit went flying. Pain exploded through her back. Volkov advanced, murder in his eyes. Then Cassian was on him from behind, arm locked around his throat. They went down together, struggling. Cassian's wounded side bled freely, but he didn't let go. Squeezed harder, cut off air and blood flow. Volkov thrashed, weakened, finally went still. Cassian held on for another 30 seconds, making sure, then released him. Volkov's body slumped, lifeless. The silence was deafening. Cassian sat back, breathing hard, bleeding, victorious. Liora crawled to him, hands finding his wound, pressing against bleeding that wouldn't stop. "You're tearing yourself apart," she said. "Had to be sure. He's dead. You can stop now." Cassian looked at her. Blood covered his face. Exhaustion made his eyes dark. But underneath it all was something else. Relief. Grief. Release. "It's over," he said. "Not until I stop this bleeding." She worked fast, field bandaging his reopened wound. Not sterile, not pretty, but enough to keep him alive until they got back to the estate. Around them, the sounds of fighting had stopped. Victor appeared in the doorway. "Boss, we need to leave. Police are coming. Someone called it in." "How many did we lose?" Cassian asked. 5 dead. Everyone else wounded but mobile. Volkov's people scattered when they saw him go down. "And Roman?" "Dead, bled out on stage." Cassian nodded slowly. His brother. His enemy. His family. All of it finished in one night. They limped out of the opera house as sirens wailed in the distance. The building stood damaged but not destroyed, a monument to the violence that had occurred inside. Blood stained the marble. Bodies would be found, questions would be asked, but by then Cassian's people would have sanitized anything that pointed back to them. This was how his world worked, brutal, efficient, vanishing before consequences arrived. In the van heading back to the estate, Liora sat pressed against Cassian. His blood soaked through her clothes. She'd lost count of how many people she'd treated, how many she'd failed to save. Her hands shook with delayed shock. "You saved my life," Cassian said quietly. "Again. That's what I do." "No, you do more than that. You stood beside me when you should have run. You fought when you're not a fighter." "I'm whatever I need to be." He took her hand, intertwined their bloody fingers. "When we get home, I'm making changes. No more of this. No more wars. We're going legitimate." "Can you do that? Just walk away?" "I can try. For you. For us." Liora wanted to believe him, wanted to think that tonight marked an ending rather than just another chapter. But she'd learned enough about his world to know that violence had momentum, that walking away wasn't simple. Still, she squeezed his hand and said, "Okay," because what else was there? They'd survived. Against impossible odds, they'd made it through, and tomorrow they'd deal with whatever came next. Together. The estate appeared through the dawn light, damaged but standing. Home, such as it was. As they pulled through the gates, Liora realized something that should have terrified her, but somehow didn't. She wasn't the same person who'd opened her apartment door to three men in suits months ago. That woman had been drowning, desperate, alone. This woman had killed, had stood in a war zone and fought back, had chosen love over safety and violence over surrender. This woman was Cassian Moretti's equal, and there was no going back from that. Not now, not ever. The sun rose over Chicago like an accusation. Liora stood in the medical suite, hands submerged in a sink full of bloodied water, watching pink swirl down the drain. She'd been washing them for 5 minutes. The blood was already gone, but she couldn't stop scrubbing, couldn't erase the feeling of Volkov's skull cracking under metal, the weight of the gun in her hand. The man she'd shot in the Opera House corridor, his chest exploding red before he even knew she was there. A surgeon saved lives. She'd taken them. The door opened. Cassian stood in the threshold, freshly bandaged, his shirt clean but his face still carrying the exhaustion of someone who'd survived the impossible. He looked at her hands, raw and red from scrubbing. "You need to stop," he said quietly. "I killed someone." Her voice came out flat. "Multiple people, actually. I lost count after 3. They would have killed you first. Does that make it better?" "No, but it makes it survival." Liora finally pulled her hands from the water, dried them on a towel that came away pink. "I became a doctor to heal. Now I'm standing here covered in blood I helped spill. What does that make me?" "Human." Cassian moved closer. "You think I don't ask myself the same thing every time? You think I don't see their faces? Do you?" "Every single one. But I see the faces of people who are alive because I did what needed doing. That's the trade. That's always been the trade." She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him it was different. But in the past 6 hours, she'd learned it wasn't. Violence was violence. Whether delivered with a scalpel or a bullet, death looked the same. "How many of our people made it?" she asked. 18 wounded, 7 dead total from last night. 3 from the diversionary strikes, 4 from the Opera House. Cassian's jaw tightened. "Names you should know: Marcus Webb, Daniel Kim, Joseph Rivera, Thomas Grant, Antonio Ruiz, Michael Chen, Christopher Walsh. Good men. Men with families. Because of Roman. Because of choices. Mine. His. Volkov's. All of us played this game and they paid the price. Their families will be taken care of. Money. Education for kids, houses paid off. It doesn't bring them back, but it's what I can offer." Liora thought about the 7 men who'd woken up yesterday morning not knowing they'd be dead by dawn. About the people who loved them, who'd get phone calls or knocks on doors delivering the worst news possible. Also, Cassian could end a war his own brother started. "Was it worth it?" she asked. "I don't know yet. Ask me in a year when I can see what we built on their graves." He left her alone in the medical suite. Liora finished cleaning up, methodical and thorough, erasing evidence of the night's carnage. When she finally emerged, the house was buzzing with controlled chaos. Men repairing damage. Security sweeping for threats. Victor coordinating everything despite his wounded shoulder. She found Emma in the library exactly where they'd left her, awake, staring at nothing. "Hey," Liora said softly. Emma looked up. Her eyes were red but dry. Cried out hours ago. "Is it over?" "Yeah, it's over." "The men who took me?" "Dead. All of them." "Good." The word came out hard, not like Emma at all. "I hope they suffered." Liora sat beside her sister, close enough to touch but not quite making contact. "I'm sorry. For all of it. For the debt. For bringing you into this. For lying about what I do. You work for criminals." Emma's voice was hollow. "The man who owned this place? Cassian. He's a crime lord, and you're his doctor. It's more complicated than that." "Is it?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty simple. You sold yourself to pay my debts, traded your medical license and morals to keep me safe. And last night, I almost died because of it. Anyway." The accuracy hurt. "You're right. About all of it." "So what now? You keep working for him? Keep patching up criminals and pretending you're still a real doctor?" "I am a real doctor." "No. You're whatever he needs you to be. I heard him say it. You're his." Emma finally looked at her. "And the worst part? I think you want to be. Liora opened her mouth to deny it. Couldn't. Because Emma wasn't wrong. Somewhere between that first night and now, between gunshot wounds and late-night conversations and standing beside Cassian while his world burned, she'd stopped being a hostage to circumstance and become something else. A partner. A participant. His. I love him, Liora said quietly, the first time she'd admitted it out loud. I know that's insane. I know it makes no sense, but I do. Does he love you back? I think so. In his way. His way involves people dying. Yeah, it does. Emma stood, moving to the window. Outside, guards patrolled ground still marked by last night's attack. I can't be part of this. Can't watch you become someone I don't recognize. What are you saying? I'm saying I need to leave. Get out of Chicago. Start over somewhere you're not connected to any of this. The words landed like stones. Liora had spent months protecting Emma, fighting to keep her safe, and now Emma was choosing to walk away from that protection. Where will you go? I don't know yet. Portland maybe, or Seattle, somewhere far from here. Emma turned. Victor said there's money, new identity. I'll take it. Start clean. Emma, don't try to convince me to stay. We both know this is better, safer for both of us. She was right. As long as Emma stayed in Chicago, stayed connected to Liora, she'd be a target, a weakness someone could exploit. Distance was the only real protection. Okay, Liora said. When? Today. As soon as arrangements are made. I don't want to drag this out. They spent the next 2 hours together. Not talking much. Just existing in the same space one last time as sisters who understood each other. Emma packed the few belongings she had. Liora helped, silent, mourning a relationship that would never be the same. Victor arranged everything, new documents, cash, a contact in Seattle who'd help her get settled. By noon, a car waited in the circular drive. Emma hugged her at the front door. Take care of yourself. Try not to get killed. Same to you. Call when you're settled. I will. But they both knew she probably wouldn't. This was goodbye. Real goodbye. The kind that meant years might pass before they spoke again. If ever. Liora watched the car disappear down the drive, watched her sister vanish into a new life, carrying trauma they'd never discuss, and debts that could never be repaid. She stood there long after the car was gone, staring at empty road, feeling the weight of choices made and prices paid. Cassian found her an hour later, still at the window. She's gone? He asked. Yeah, to Seattle, new name, new life. That's smart. Safer for her. I know, doesn't make it hurt less. He stood beside her, not touching, just present. You saved her life twice. Once by taking this job. Once by shooting at Volkov and creating chaos that let us fight back. That's more than most siblings ever do for each other. And I destroyed her innocence. The world did that. Not you. You just couldn't protect her from it forever. Liora turned to face him. What happens now? You said you wanted to go legitimate. Can you actually do that? I can try. Cassian gestured toward the library. Come on. I want to show you something. He led her to the library where maps were spread across the table. But these weren't territory maps. These were development plans, real estate projects, corporate structures. I've been planning this for months, Cassian said, since before you arrived. Volkov's war just accelerated the timeline. Planning what? An exit. A real one. Not fake retirement while still running things from the shadows. Actual legitimate business. He pointed to the maps. Real estate development. Political consulting. Financial investment. Everything I know about power and influence, applied legally. You think people will let you? Just walk away from the criminal side? Most of them will be relieved. War is expensive, risky. A lot of my people have families, kids. They'd rather make money safely than keep fighting for territory. He looked at her. But there will be holdouts, people who think I'm weak for choosing peace over violence. I'll have to deal with them. How? Carefully. The ones who can adapt, I'll bring into the new structure. The ones who can't, I'll pay off and cut loose. The ones who become threats. He trailed off. You'll handle them, Liora finished. Yeah, I'll handle them. She studied the plans, saw the vision of what he was trying to build. Not redemption exactly. You couldn't redeem blood, but transformation, evolution, becoming something different than what his father built. This is going to take years, she said. At least, maybe a decade before we're fully clean. We? Cassian met her eyes. Yeah, we. If you're staying, if you want to be part of this. My 18 months aren't up. Fuck the 18 months. That contract ended the moment you shot at Volkov to save my life. You're not an employee anymore, Liora. You're... He stopped, searching for words. What? Everything. You're everything. The admission hung in the air between them. No poetry, no grand declarations, just truth, raw and unpolished. I killed people for you, Liora said quietly. Became someone I swore I'd never be. That should terrify me. Does it? No, that's what terrifies me. That I'd do it again without hesitation. Cassian pulled her close, his hands framing her face. I can't promise this gets easier. Can't promise we won't face more threats, more violence, more impossible choices. But I can promise you won't face them alone. That's not much of a promise in your world. It's all I've got. She kissed him then. Not desperate like before. Not urgent. Just inevitable. Like gravity. Like two bodies finally giving into a pull that had been building since that first night when she dug a bullet out of his shoulder and called him an idiot. When they broke apart, Cassian was smiling. So you're staying? I'm staying. God help us both. Pretty sure we're past divine intervention. Probably. The next 3 months became a war of a different kind. Cassian began the slow process of dismantling his criminal empire and rebuilding something legitimate. Operations were shuttered or sold off to allied families. Territory was surrendered without fight, shocking rivals who'd expected resistance. Money was laundered clean through a maze of shell companies and legal investments. Liora established a medical foundation, funded by Cassian's legitimate businesses. Free clinics in neighborhoods that had seen the worst of gang violence. Trauma counseling for victims. Addiction treatment. She hired doctors who'd been burned out by the system, who wanted to help people who couldn't pay. It was redemption theater, she knew. Blood money scrubbed clean through charity. But the people helped didn't care where the funding came from. They just cared that someone finally gave a damn. She also continued as Cassian's private physician. Not because he forced her, because she chose to. His organization might be transforming, but it still attracted violence. 3 separate attempts on his life in the first month alone. Each time, Liora patched him up, kept him breathing, sent him back out to finish the work. They moved through those months like soldiers after a war. Functional, focused, falling into bed together when exhaustion allowed, finding comfort in each other's scars. Victor became head of security for the new corporate structure. His shoulder healed crooked but functional. He joked that it made him look more intimidating in business meetings. The men who'd survived the Opera House became the core of Cassian's new operation. Loyal, tested, the kind of people you built empires with because they'd already proven they wouldn't break. The men who'd died became names on a memorial Cassian erected in the estate's private garden. 7 stones. Simple. No explanations, just names and dates. Liora found him there sometimes at dawn, standing among the markers, paying respects to ghosts. Roman's death was ruled gang violence by police who didn't look too hard. His body was cremated, no funeral, no memorial. Cassian scattered the ashes in the Chicago River without ceremony. A brother who'd chosen betrayal didn't deserve more. Some nights, Liora dreamed about the Opera House, about the man she'd shot, about the weight of the metal railing in her hands. She'd wake gasping, covered in sweat, convinced her hands were covered in blood. Cassian would be awake beside her, his own demons keeping him company. They'd lie in the dark, talking about nothing and everything, making plans for a future that seemed increasingly possible. 4 months after the Opera House, the federal investigation began. FBI agents appeared at 3 of Cassian's legitimate businesses, asking questions about fund sourcing and corporate structures. Nothing they could arrest him for, not yet, but a warning shot across the bow. They're looking for connections to the old operations, Victor explained in the secure conference room, trying to prove the new business is just a front. Is it? One of the board members asked. No, Cassian said firmly. Everything we're doing now is legal. Aggressive, maybe. Ruthless in business negotiations, but legal. The problem is perception, Victor continued. Your history. Everyone knows what you were. They're assuming you still are. Then we prove them wrong. Cassian looked around the table. Full cooperation with investigators, open books, nothing to hide because there's nothing illegal to find. That's risky, another member said. They could twist things, find crimes where none exist. Let them try, I'm done hiding. He looked at Liora. We're done hiding. The investigation dragged on for 6 months. Agents combed through records, interviewed employees, followed money trails. They found old crimes, sure, but nothing connected to current operations, nothing that could tie Cassian to ongoing criminal activity. Eventually, reluctantly, they concluded what Cassian had been telling them all along. He'd actually walked away, transformed from crime lord to legitimate businessman. It was rare, nearly impossible, but the evidence supported it. The case closed without charges. Cassian Moretti was officially clean. The first thing he did was propose. Not at a restaurant or some planned romantic moment. In the medical suite while Liora was treating a minor knife wound he'd gotten during a business negotiation gone wrong. Nothing life-threatening, just a reminder that even legitimate business carried risks. "Marry me," he said as she sutured. Her hands paused. "What?" "Marry me. Make this official. Stop pretending we're anything other than permanent. You're asking me to marry you while I'm literally sewing your skin back together?" Seemed appropriate given our history. Liora tied off the suture, examined her work. "This is insane. That's not an answer." She looked at him, really looked, past the scars and the violence and the criminal history to the man underneath who'd chosen transformation, who'd walked away from everything his father built to create something different, who'd trusted her with his life and his future. "Yes," she said. "Obviously, yes." "Obviously? We've killed people together, Cassian. Marriage is practically a step down in commitment." He laughed, pulling her close despite the fresh stitches. "When you put it that way." They married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the estate. Victor stood as best man. Emma didn't come. Sent a card from Seattle instead with a simple message. "Hope you're happy. Try to stay alive. Love, E." Liora wore a simple white dress. No veil. No pretense of innocence. They spoke vows they wrote themselves, standing in the garden among the memorial stones, promising loyalty, honesty, to face whatever came together. The kiss was witnessed by 40 people who'd become family through blood and survival. Some had criminal records. Others were politicians and business leaders. All of them understood what Cassian and Liora represented, proof that people could change, that the past didn't have to define the future. The reception lasted until dawn, music and champagne and laughter that felt earned after everything they'd survived. Liora danced with her new husband under stars that had witnessed their worst moments, and somehow, impossibly, their best ones too. A year after the Opera House, Liora stood on the balcony of Cassian's office tower downtown. Below, Chicago sprawled in every direction, the city that had almost destroyed them both, the city they were rebuilding, one neighborhood at a time. Cassian joined her, 2 cups of coffee in hand. They'd both learned to sleep less. Too much to do. Too many people depending on them. "The foundation opened its 10th clinic today," Liora said. "West Side, high crime area. We're already booked solid for the next month." "That's good. Needed. Your real estate project in South Loop broke ground yesterday. Mixed income housing, half market rate, half affordable. Should be done in 18 months. They stood in comfortable silence, watching their city wake up. Traffic building. People heading to jobs. Normal life happening below while they orchestrated transformation from above. "Do you miss it?" Liora asked. "The old life?" Cassian considered. "Parts of it. The simplicity of power through fear, knowing exactly where you stand based on who's afraid of you. And now? Now I have to actually earn respect, prove value, build relationships instead of taking territory." He smiled. "It's exhausting, but better." "Better how?" "I sleep more. Not much, but more. Used to be I'd wake up every hour checking for threats. Now it's just every few hours. That's still terrible sleep hygiene," says the woman who worked a 70-hour week. "The clinics need me. And I need you not to burn out." Cassian pulled her close. "We're in this for the long haul now. Decades, not months. You have to pace yourself. Look who's talking. You scheduled back-to-back meetings for 12 hours today. That's different. How?" Because I'm incredibly important and busy. She elbowed him. He laughed. They finished their coffee watching the sunrise paint Chicago in gold and red, the city of their becoming, the place where they'd both died and been reborn into something neither recognized but both accepted. 2 years after the Opera House, Liora found out she was pregnant. She stared at the test in the bathroom of their private quarters, hands shaking. A baby. A child growing inside her. A future she'd never let herself imagine during the dark days. Cassian found her still holding the test, tears streaming down her face. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. "Nothing. Everything. I don't know." She showed him the test. "We're going to have a baby." His face went through several expressions in rapid succession: shock, fear, joy, landing on something that looked like wonder. "A baby," he repeated. "Yeah. Our baby. Unless you know something I don't about biology." He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was made of glass. "I never thought I'd have this. Never let myself want it. And now? Now I'm terrified and excited and completely overwhelmed." Same. They stood in the bathroom, holding each other, contemplating the impossible future growing between them. A child who'd be born into their transformed world, who'd grow up knowing their father used to be a crime lord and their mother had killed to protect him, who'd inherit wealth built on blood but clean through years of legitimate work. "What kind of parents are we going to be?" Liora asked. "Honest ones, flawed ones, but present. That's more than I had. Your father was a monster who taught me what not to be. I'll do better. We'll do better." 9 months later, on a cold February morning, Liora gave birth to a daughter. They named her Sophia. No family names, no legacy weight. Just a name they both liked. A fresh start. Cassian held his daughter for the first time with hands that had killed dozens, but cradled her like she was the most precious thing in existence. Liora watched from the hospital bed, exhausted and euphoric, seeing her husband become something new. A father. A protector of innocence instead of a dealer of violence. "She's perfect," Cassian whispered. "She's ours," Liora said. Same thing. Victor visited that afternoon bringing flowers and looking uncomfortable. "Never thought I'd see the day. Boss holding a baby." "Life's full of surprises," Cassian said, not taking his eyes off Sophia. "She's going to have a good life. You two will make sure of it." "We'll try. That's all anyone can do." Sophia grew up surrounded by contradictions. Guards who told stories about her father's business ventures that sounded suspiciously like action movies. A mother who ran medical clinics but had a gun safe in her closet. Wealth that came with whispered questions about how it was really earned. But she also grew up loved, fiercely protected, given every opportunity to become whoever she wanted, not pressured into the family business, not forced into any particular path. On Sophia's 5th birthday, Liora and Cassian stood in the garden watching her run through the grounds with children from the Foundation's programs. They'd opened the estate for the party, filled it with families who'd benefited from their work over the years. "Think she'll ask someday?" Liora said. "About what we used to be?" "Probably. Kids ask everything eventually." "What will we tell her?" Cassian considered. "The truth. That we made mistakes, did terrible things, but chose to be better. Chose to build something good from the wreckage." "You make it sound noble." "It wasn't. It was survival. But maybe that's noble in its own way." Sophia squealed as another child tagged her. Pure joy. Innocent happiness. The kind Liora never thought she'd be able to give anyone. "We did okay," she said quietly. "Better than okay." Cassian pulled her close. "We built a life. A real one. Against every odd. And only occasionally get shot at anymore. Occasionally is a significant improvement over constantly." They watched their daughter play, surrounded by the life they'd built from blood and choices and love that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. The estate stood behind them, beautiful and terrible, a monument to transformation. The memorial stones marked men who died so they could live. Chicago sprawled beyond the gates, changed by their efforts in ways both visible and invisible. 10 years after the Opera House, Cassian and Liora stood on the rooftop of their Foundation's headquarters. Below, the city sparkled with lights. Above, Stars competed with urban glow. They were older now, gray threading through Cassian's hair, lines around Leora's eyes from years of smiling and squinting into surgical lights. Both scarred, both weathered, both alive. "Did you ever imagine this?" Leora asked. "That night when I stitched you up in my kitchen?" "Not even slightly. I thought I'd use you for 18 months and move on." "What changed?" "You. Everything. The way you looked at me like I was just a man, not a monster. Like I could be something different if I tried." "And could you?" He gestured to the view, their foundation, the clinics, the housing projects, the lives changed. "You tell me." Leora leaned against him. "I think you became what you always could have been. You just needed a reason. You were my reason." "I know. That's a lot of pressure." "You handled it." Below, an ambulance siren wailed. Someone needed help. Someone always needed help. But now there were clinics, resources, people who cared. Not enough. Never enough. But more than before. "I killed 3 people," Leora said suddenly. "To protect you. To protect us. Some nights I still see their faces." "I know. Does it get easier?" "No, but you learn to live with it, to balance it against the good you've done since." "Is that enough? Does the good outweigh the bad?" Cassian turned her to face him. "I don't know. Maybe we'll never know. But I know we tried. Fought to be better than what we were. Built something that helps people instead of hurting them. That has to count for something. Even if we can never be clean? Especially then. Anyone can be good if they start good. Takes something else to be good after being terrible." They stood on the rooftop as the city moved below them. Chicago. Their city. The place where they'd met covered in blood and found something like redemption in the wreckage. Not perfect, not innocent, but transformed. Sophia was 12 now, smart, observant, already asking questions they deflected with partial truths. Someday soon she'd demand full answers, and they'd give them, because honesty was the only currency that mattered in the end. Victor retired at 55, his shoulder finally giving out. Moved to Florida with a pension that would keep him comfortable for life. Sent postcards saying he was bored but happy. Missing the action but not the pain. Emma called once a year on Leora's birthday. They talked for 20 minutes, carefully avoiding anything too deep. She was married now, had a kid of her own, living a normal life in Seattle. The debt and danger faded to stories she probably told at dinner parties about her crazy sister who'd gotten mixed up with the wrong crowd. The wrong crowd. That's what Cassian Moretti had been. And still was, in some fundamental way. You didn't scrub away that kind of history, didn't erase the bodies or the blood or the choices made in darkness, but you could build on top of it, create something new. A life that acknowledged the past without being defined by it. 15 years after that first night, Leora stood in the medical suite treating a gunshot wound. Not Cassian's this time. A worker from one of their construction sites, caught in crossfire during an attempted robbery. Wrong place, wrong time. She worked with the same steady hands that had saved Cassian's life. Same precision, same focus. But this time she was saving an innocent, someone who'd done nothing to deserve violence. The man survived, would need physical therapy, but alive. Cassian found her afterward, washing her hands in the same sink where she'd scrubbed away so much blood over the years. "You saved another one," he said. "It's what I do. It's who you are." She dried her hands, looked at him. The gray in his hair had spread. His face carried lines earned through years of stress and transformation. But his eyes were the same, gray and sharp, and focused on her like she was the only thing that mattered. "Did we do the right thing?" she asked. "All those years ago, you forcing me into this, me staying, everything that came after." "I don't know if there was a right thing, only choices that led us here. And here's good. Here's alive, together, building something that matters. That's more than most people get." Leora thought about the 17-year-old version of herself who'd dreamed of becoming a doctor, who'd imagined a clean career saving lives in sterile hospitals, who'd never conceived of a path that led through darkness to something that looked almost like redemption. That girl would be horrified by what she'd become. But that girl had been naive, hadn't understood that life was messy, that morality wasn't binary, that sometimes you had to make terrible choices to reach better outcomes. "I love you," she said. Even though you ruined my life. I saved your life, Cassian corrected. Same thing. He kissed her there in the medical suite, surrounded by the tools of healing and the ghosts of violence. They'd carved out something impossible together, a life that shouldn't work but did. Love that defied every logical objection. 20 years after the Opera House, Cassian and Liora hosted a gala at their foundation headquarters. Politicians and business leaders and community activists mixed with former criminals who'd transformed themselves. The room buzzed with conversation and possibility. Sophia, now 18 and heading to medical school, worked the room with natural grace. She understood what her parents had built, maybe not every detail of how, but the why, the transformation, the choice to be better. Someone asked Cassian for an interview about his journey from crime to legitimate business. He declined politely. Some stories were too complicated for sound bites, but later, when the crowd had thinned, a young reporter cornered him anyway. Is it true you used to run organized crime in Chicago? She asked. That's old history. But is it true? Cassian looked at Liora across the room. She raised an eyebrow. Your call, her expression said. Yes, he said simply. I did terrible things, hurt people, built an empire on violence. Then I met someone who made me want to be different, spent the last 20 years trying to be that different person. Do you think you've succeeded? Ask the families in the neighborhoods we've invested in, the people treated at our clinics, the kids who got educations funded by our foundation. He smiled slightly. I can't undo the past, but I can build a future that's better. That's all any of us can do. The reporter scribbled notes. That's quite a redemption story. It's not redemption, it's transformation. Those are different things. How so? Redemption suggests you're forgiven, redeemed, clean. I'm not. Never will be. But transformation means you become something new while carrying everything old. You don't erase history. You build on it. The interview ran in a weekend magazine, generated some buzz. Most people didn't care. Cassian Moretti was old news. His criminal empire, ancient history. What mattered now was the legitimate business, the foundation, the good being done. That was fine with both of them. They'd never sought absolution, just the chance to be better than what they'd been. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Cassian and Liora returned to the Opera House. It had been renovated, restored, turned into a performing arts center funded partially by their foundation. The blood was long gone. The bullet holes repaired. The ghosts swept away by music and laughter. They stood in the main theater where they'd fought for their lives, where men had died, where everything had almost ended. Doesn't look the same, Liora said. Nothing does after 25 years. You ever regret it? The transformation? Walking away from power? Every day, Cassian smiled at her expression. But I regret the idea of not doing it more, of still being what I was, missing out on this. This being, you, Sophia, a life that means something beyond fear and territory, waking up and not immediately calculating threats. He took her hand. I was powerful before, but I'm alive now. There's a difference. They walked through the theater, past seats filled with people waiting for a performance. No one recognized them. No one knew that this beautiful space had once been soaked in blood. The two people standing among them had survived the impossible and built something lasting from the wreckage. That was okay too. Some stories didn't need to be told. Some transformations happened quietly, in darkness, witnessed only by the people who lived them. The performance started. Mozart, opera, ironic and fitting. Liora leaned against Cassian in the darkened theater, his arm around her shoulders, and thought about the long road they'd walked together. From a tiny apartment to an estate to an empire rebuilt on legitimacy instead of fear. From strangers to enemies to lovers to partners. From desperate survival to intentional living. She'd killed for him. He'd almost died for her. They destroyed and rebuilt themselves so many times that the original versions felt like different people entirely. Maybe they were. The woman who'd opened her door to three men in suits no longer existed. She'd been consumed by fire and reformed into something harder, sharper, more complete. The man who'd demanded she save him had softened at the edges while maintaining his core strength. He'd traded domination for influence, violence for strategy, fear for respect. Together, they'd become something neither could have achieved alone. A partnership forged in blood but sustained by choice. By showing up. By refusing to walk away even when staying was hardest. The opera swelled to its climax, voices rising, music building. Around them, the audience watched a story of passion and sacrifice, of choices made and prices paid. Liora and Cassian had lived their own opera, just as tragic, just as transformative, but with an ending they'd written themselves, not happily ever after, just after, together. Still breathing, still fighting, still choosing each other every day despite every reason not to. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. The curtain fell. The audience applauded. Cassian and Liora stood with them, clapping for performers who'd told a story that echoed their own. Then they walked out of the opera house into the Chicago night, hand in hand, scarred and weathered and impossibly, stubbornly alive. Behind them, the building stood restored and beautiful, a monument to transformation, to the possibility of becoming something better than what you were. Ahead of them, the city sprawled in lights and shadows, still dangerous, still difficult, but theirs, built through blood and choices and love that defied every logical objection. They'd survived, more than survived, thrived. And that was the real victory. Not that they'd won, that they'd changed the game entirely.